The CEO's fake husband, when a desperate lie became the most dangerous truth. Ryan Cole never imagined that one desperate phone call would destroy everything he'd carefully built as a single father. When Claire Vaughn, the untouchable CEO who could buy his entire world with a signature, begged him to pretend to be her husband for just one night, he thought he understood the stakes. He was wrong. What started as a simple favor spiraled into corporate warfare, blackmail, and a choice no father should ever face. Protect the woman who'd become his entire world, or save his daughter's future. If you want to see how far a father will go when love and survival collide, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday evening, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of reflected neon. Ryan Cole stood in the doorway of his workshop, watching water cascade off the corrugated metal roof, creating a curtain between him and the rest of the world. He liked it that way, separated, controlled, manageable. Inside Cole Fabrication, the smell of cut metal and sawdust hung in the air like incense. Ryan had built this place from nothing over the past 8 years, transforming an abandoned garage into a modest but respected custom metal workshop. The space was organized with the precision of a man who couldn't afford chaos. Welding equipment along the north wall, woodworking tools to the south. His cluttered desk shoved into the corner where he could see both the street entrance and the back door simultaneously. Trust no one. Watch everything. Those were the rules. Ryan was 42, but looked older in the harsh fluorescent light, lines carved deep around his eyes from years of squinting at blueprints and worry. His hands were scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who'd built his life with them after everything else fell apart. He wore the same thing every day. Jeans worn soft at the knees, steel-toed boots, and a Henley shirt that had seen better years. His dark hair was starting to gray at the temples, which his 11-year-old daughter Mia said made him look distinguished, though he suspected she'd learned that word from one of her books and wanted to use it. Mia. Everything came back to Mia. Ryan glanced at the clock, 6:47 p.m. He needed to finish the railing sections for the Morrison project, clean up, and get home by 8. Mia had a science test tomorrow, and he'd promised to quiz her on the periodic table. She was struggling with chemistry, not because she wasn't smart. God, his daughter was brilliant, but because she'd missed 2 weeks of school last month when she'd gotten pneumonia. The medical bills were still piled on his kitchen counter, a paper monument to American healthcare. $17,000, even with insurance. He was paying it down in installments that left his bank account gasping, but he was paying it. That's what mattered. The bell above his door chimed, and Ryan looked up expecting a last-minute customer trying to beat the rain. Instead, Claire Vaughn stepped into his shop, and the entire world seemed to shift on its axis. Claire Vaughn didn't belong in places like this. She belonged in boardrooms and penthouse offices, in the society pages of the Tribune, in a tax bracket so far above Ryan's that they might as well be different species. She was 38, though she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a style that probably had a French name, and she wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Ryan's truck. But tonight, something was wrong. Her normally composed face was pale, her eyes too bright. She was soaked from the rain, her expensive suit darkening with water, and she was breathing like she'd run all the way here. When she looked at Ryan, he saw something he'd never seen in her before. Fear. "I need your help," she said without preamble, her voice shaking. "I know this is going to sound insane, but I need you to pretend to be my husband." Ryan stood there with a welding torch in one hand, processing words that made no sense. He'd known Claire Vaughn for 3 years. She'd commissioned custom metalwork for her company's offices, sleek, modern pieces that had led to more high-end clients. Their relationship was professional, cordial, nothing more. She called him Mr. Cole. He called her Ms. Vaughn. They talked about designs and deadlines and industrial-grade steel. They did not talk about pretending to be married. "I'm sorry. What?" Claire closed her eyes, took a breath, and when she opened them again, some of that famous Vaughn control had returned. "I need you to come to dinner tomorrow night and pretend to be my husband. Just for one evening, 3, maybe 4 hours. I'll pay you whatever you want." Ryan set down the torch carefully. "Miss Vaughn, I think you need to start from the beginning. She laughed, but it was a brittle sound that could shatter. The beginning. Right. The beginning is that my father is a manipulative bastard who's been trying to take my company from me since the day I inherited it from my grandfather. The middle is that I told him I was married to keep him from setting me up with every eligible corporate heir in Chicago. And the end is that he's arriving tomorrow to meet my husband, and if I can't produce one, he'll use it as proof that I'm unstable and push the board to force a merger that will destroy everything I've built. Ryan processed this information with the careful deliberation of a man who'd learned to look for the catch in every deal. And you want me to be this husband? Yes. Why me? Claire met his eyes. Because you're the only person I can think of who won't try to leverage this into something. You're not part of my world. You won't see this as an opportunity to network or gain favor or get a foot in some corporate door. You'll do the job and walk away, and because... She hesitated. Because you're real, Mr. Cole. My father will try to tear apart anyone I bring. He'll look for the social climber, the gold digger, the fraud. But you're just a man who works with his hands and goes home to his daughter. There's no angle to attack. Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. You've looked into me. Of course I have. I don't make important decisions without research. Claire's expression softened slightly. I know you're a single father. I know your ex-wife left when Mia was 3. I know you've built this business from nothing while raising a daughter alone. I know you're behind on medical bills from last month. I know... That's enough. Ryan's voice was quiet, but carried a warning. You've made your point. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the drum of rain on metal. I'll pay you $50,000, Claire said. Half up front, half after dinner. That would cover your daughter's medical bills and give you breathing room for months. $50,000. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. That was more than Ryan made in a good quarter. That was Mia's hospital bills paid in full, with enough left over to finally fix the truck's transmission, replace the ancient furnace at home before winter really hit, maybe even put some away for Mia's college fund. That was also a lie. A performance. A step into a world where people like Claire Vaughn played games with truth and leverage, where nothing was as it seemed. I'm not a good liar, Ryan said finally. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to be yourself, just with a wedding ring on. Claire pulled a small box from her purse, opening it to reveal 2 platinum bands. They looked expensive and real, because of course they were real. Claire Vaughn didn't do anything halfway. You come to dinner. You're polite. You answer questions honestly about your work and your life. The only lie is that we're married. Everything else is just being yourself. And your father will believe that you married someone like me? Something flashed in Claire's eyes. Anger, maybe. Someone like you? You mean someone who's built a successful business through actual skill and hard work? Someone who's raised a child alone and done a damn good job of it? Yes, Mr. Cole, I think even my father would believe I'd be smart enough to marry someone like you. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the designer clothes and the desperation to something else. Loneliness. The same bone-deep weariness he saw in his own mirror every morning. The exhaustion of fighting every day to protect something precious while the world tried to take it away. He understood that fight. One dinner, he said. 3 to 4 hours. I'm home by 10 because Mia has a sitter who charges overtime. And I want the money up front. All of it. You want me to trust you enough to walk into whatever this is? You trust me enough to pay first. Claire's eyes widened slightly. All of it up front? All of it. I'm not a businessman in your world, Miss Vaughn, but I'm not an idiot. If this goes wrong, if your father sees through it, if I somehow mess up your plans, I don't want to be left with nothing while you decide whether I earned the back half of the payment. Ryan crossed his arms. You said yourself I'm the only person you can think of who won't try to leverage this. Prove you mean it. Pay me up front or find someone else. For a long moment, Claire just stared at him. Then slowly, she smiled. It was the first genuine expression he'd seen on her face since she'd walked in. You know what, Mr. Cole? My grandfather would have liked you. She pulled out her phone. Give me your banking information. You'll have the transfer in an hour. Also, Ryan didn't tell Mia about the money. He got home at 8:15, found her curled up on the couch with Mrs. Chen from next door, both of them watching some baking competition show. Mia looked up when he walked in, her face lighting up with that smile that made every hard day worth it. "Dad, you're late. Mrs. Chen made dumplings. I hope you saved me some." Ryan nodded to Mrs. Chen, a woman in her 70s who'd been more family than neighbor for the past 8 years. "Sorry I ran over. Last-minute client issue." Mrs. Chen waved him off, gathering her things. "No trouble, no trouble. This one is a good girl. We had a nice time." She patted Mia's head affectionately. "You study for that test?" "Yes, ma'am," Mia said dutifully. After Mrs. Chen left, Ryan microwaved the dumplings and sat with Mia at their small kitchen table, quizzing her on elements and atomic numbers while they ate. She knew them all. She'd just been anxious about the test. That was Mia, always worried she wasn't good enough, even though she was exceptional. "You've got this," Ryan said, squeezing her shoulder. "You know the material. Just breathe and trust yourself." "Like you always tell me?" "Like I always tell you." Later, after Mia was in bed, Ryan sat at his kitchen counter and stared at his phone. The banking app showed a deposit of $50,000, posted an hour ago. It was real. This was actually happening. He'd agreed to pretend to be married to one of the most powerful women in Chicago, to walk into a dinner with her father, a man who apparently made Claire Vaughn, who made million-dollar decisions daily, visibly afraid. What the hell had he gotten himself into? Ryan opened his laptop and did what Claire had done, research. He spent 3 hours reading about the Vaughn family empire, about Claire's grandfather, who'd built a manufacturing dynasty from nothing, about her father Richard, who'd been bitter when the old man left control of the company to his granddaughter instead of his son. He read about hostile takeover attempts, about Richard Vaughn's reputation as a corporate raider, about the ongoing battle for control of Vaughn Industries. He read gossip column speculation about Claire's personal life, articles that described her as married to her work and romantically unavailable. And he read about the merger that Richard was pushing, a deal that would absorb Vaughn Industries into a larger conglomerate, that would remove Claire from operational control and install a board that Richard would dominate. This wasn't just about a father-daughter disagreement. This was war. And somehow, Ryan Cole, who'd spent the last 8 years just trying to keep his head above water, had just enlisted in someone else's battle. The next evening, Ryan stood in front of his bathroom mirror, trying to knot a tie for the first time in years. His fingers remembered the motion, but the result looked wrong. He unknotted it and started again. "You look weird," Mia said from the doorway. "Thanks, kiddo. Very helpful." "No, I mean weird like fancy. Where are you going?" Ryan had prepared for this question. "I have a business dinner. A client wants to discuss a big project, so I have to dress up and make a good impression." It wasn't entirely a lie, just not entirely the truth. Mia studied him with those two knowing eyes. At 11, she'd already learned to read his moods better than any adult. "Is this about money?" Ryan's hand stilled on the tie. "What makes you ask that?" "You've been stressed since I got sick. I know the hospital bills are a lot. I heard you on the phone with the insurance company." Mia's voice got quiet. "I'm sorry I got pneumonia." Ryan abandoned the tie and knelt down to eye level with his daughter. "Hey, look at me. You have nothing to apologize for. Getting sick wasn't your fault. And yes, the bills are big, but we're handling it. We always handle it, right?" "Right," Mia said, but she still looked worried. "This dinner tonight might help with that," Ryan admitted carefully. "This client might bring in some good business, but even if it doesn't, we're fine. We've got each other, and that's what matters, okay?" Mia nodded, then reached up and fixed his tie with surprising competence. "Mrs. Chen taught me last year for the school concert. You make a triangle here, then loop it through." Ryan watched his 11-year-old daughter tie his tie perfectly and felt his heart break and mend simultaneously. "When did you get so grown up?" "I've always been this grown up. You just don't notice because you still cut the crusts off my sandwiches." "That's because the crusts are the worst part." "That's because you love me." "Yeah," Ryan said softly. "I really do." Mrs. Chen arrived at 6:30. Ryan went over the emergency numbers, the bedtime routine, the fact that Mia was allowed 1 hour of TV and then needed to read for 30 minutes before lights out. Mrs. Chen nodded patiently through information she'd heard 100 times before. At the door, Mia grabbed his hand. "Dad?" Is everything going to be okay? Ryan thought about Claire Vaughn's desperate eyes, about the $50,000 in his account, about stepping into a world he didn't understand to fight a battle he couldn't predict. Everything's going to be fine, he said, and hoped it wasn't the worst lie he'd ever told his daughter. Claire had sent a car. Of course she had sent a car. Not a taxi or an Uber, but an actual town car with a driver in a suit who held the door open and called him Sir. Ryan felt ridiculous climbing into the leather-scented interior, but the driver showed no judgment, just closed the door smoothly and pulled into traffic. The restaurant was in the Gold Coast, because of course it was. The kind of place where the menu didn't list prices and the waiters moved with choreographed precision. Ryan had looked it up earlier. Reservations booked months in advance, $18 cocktails, entrees that cost more than his weekly grocery budget. Claire was waiting in the lobby, and Ryan almost didn't recognize her. She'd always been beautiful in that untouchable corporate way. Severe suits, minimal jewelry, hair that didn't dare fall out of place. Tonight, she'd softened somehow. She wore a deep blue dress that was elegant without being flashy, her hair down in waves around her shoulders, just enough makeup to highlight rather than transform. She looked like someone who might actually be married to a fabricator from a working-class neighborhood. She looked real. "Mr. Cole," she said, and there was relief in her voice. "Thank you for coming." "We have a deal," Ryan said simply. Then, because it felt necessary, "You look nice." A small smile. "Thank you, you clean up well yourself." She handed him the wedding ring. "Shall we?" Ryan slipped the band on his left ring finger. It fit perfectly. She'd done her research thoroughly. The weight felt strange, foreign, like a promise he hadn't made. "Before we go in," Claire said quietly, "there are a few things you should know. My father is difficult. He'll try to provoke you, to find cracks. He'll ask personal questions designed to make you uncomfortable. He'll probably insult you in ways that sound like compliments. Sounds delightful. I need you to stay calm no matter what he says. Don't defend yourself. It won't work, and it'll just confirm his suspicions. Just be honest and direct. Can you do that?" Ryan thought about the hundreds of difficult clients he'd dealt with over the years, the contractors who'd tried to cheat him, the suppliers who'd thought they could bully the small-time fabricator. He'd learned early that the best response to aggression was steady, unshakable calm. "I can do that." Claire studied his face, then nodded. "Okay. Let's go meet my father." Richard Vaughn was waiting at a private table in the back, and Ryan understood immediately why Claire was afraid. The man radiated controlled menace. He was in his mid-60s, silver-haired and distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ryan's truck. But it was his eyes that told the real story. Cold, calculating, constantly assessing. This was a man who viewed people as assets or obstacles, who'd built his life on knowing exactly where to apply pressure to make things break. He stood when they approached, his smile sharp enough to cut. "Claire, you look lovely." "Father," Claire's voice was carefully neutral. "This is Ryan Cole, my husband. Ryan, this is my father, Richard Vaughn." Ryan extended his hand, and Richard took it with a grip designed to prove something. Ryan didn't squeeze back harder. That was what Richard expected. He just met the man's eyes and shook firmly, professionally. "Mr. Vaughn, it's good to finally meet you." "Finally?" Richard's eyebrows rose as he released Ryan's hand. "My daughter has kept you quite secret. I didn't even know she was dating anyone, let alone married. When did this happen?" "6 months ago," Claire said smoothly, taking Ryan's arm. "We kept it quiet. You know how I value my privacy." Richard gestured to the seats. "Please, sit. I'm fascinated to learn how you two met." The waiter appeared immediately, describing specials in hushed tones. Ryan ordered a bourbon, simple, unpretentious, and tried not to think about how much it probably cost. Claire ordered wine. Richard ordered scotch, something with a name Ryan didn't recognize. "So," Richard said once the waiter left. "Ryan Cole, my daughter tells me you're in fabrication?" "Yes, sir. I run a custom metalwork and woodworking shop on the south side." "How practical." The pause before practical was deliberate. "And how did you meet my daughter? I can't imagine your circles overlap much." Here it was, the first test. Ryan glanced at Claire, who nodded slightly. She needed custom metalwork for her office renovation 3 years ago, Ryan said. Architectural pieces, railings, decorative panels, that sort of thing. We worked together on the designs. And romance blossomed over, what, welding torches? Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Actually, over a disagreement about steel grades, Claire interjected. Ryan insisted on a more expensive material because it would last longer. I wanted to cut costs. He refused to compromise on quality. Ryan remembered that argument. She'd wanted 304 stainless steel. He'd insisted on 3 on 16 for its superior corrosion resistance in the climate-controlled office environment. She'd thought he was trying to upsell her. He'd brought in metallurgical data to prove his point. That sounds like Claire, Richard said. Always focused on the bottom line. So you impressed her with your stubbornness? I impressed her by being right, Ryan said calmly. The 316 steel looked better and lasted longer. She appreciated quality work. Something flickered in Richard's expression. Surprise, maybe. He'd expected Ryan to be defensive or boastful. Instead, he got simple facts. The drinks arrived. Richard took a sip of his scotch and changed tactics. Tell me about your family, Ryan. Any siblings? Are your parents still living? Ryan had prepared for this. Claire had warned him that Richard would dig, would look for weaknesses. I'm an only child. My mother died when I was 19. Cancer. My father passed 5 years ago. Heart attack. I'm sorry to hear that. Richard sounded almost sincere. So it's just you. And my daughter, Ryan said. Mia. She's 11. The silence that followed was sharp. Claire had gone very still beside him. Your daughter, Richard repeated slowly. From a previous marriage, I assume? Yes, sir. And where is Mia's mother? Ryan met Richard's eyes directly. I don't know. She left when Mia was 3. Haven't heard from her since. Richard leaned back and Ryan could see the calculations running behind those cold eyes. This was ammunition, a failed marriage, a daughter from another relationship, a man who'd been abandoned. That must have been difficult, Richard said, raising a child alone while trying to run a business. It was, Ryan agreed. Still is sometimes. But we manage. Does Mia know about you and Claire? Ryan felt Claire tense. This was dangerous territory. They hadn't discussed how to handle this. She knows I'm seeing someone, Ryan said carefully. We've kept things gradual. Mia's been through enough disruption in her life. We didn't want to overwhelm her by rushing into playing house. It was a reasonable answer, the kind of thing a responsible parent would say, but Richard pounced on it. So you've been married 6 months, but your daughter doesn't know? That seems unusual, unless this marriage isn't quite what you claim it is. The accusation hung in the air. Ryan felt the trap closing. Anything he said now would sound defensive or rehearsed. Claire's hand found his under the table, squeezing gently. My daughter, Ryan said quietly, lost her mother when she was 3 years old. She woke up one morning and half her world was just gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just empty. I've spent 8 years making her feel safe again, making her believe that people don't just disappear. So no, I didn't tell her I got married and then immediately introduce her to a stepmother. I'm being careful, gradual, making sure she's ready before we disrupt her life again. He paused, holding Richard's gaze. You might think that's unusual, Mr. Vaughn. I think it's called being a good father. Silence. Richard's expression had gone unreadable. Claire's hand was still in Ryan's, her grip tight. Then Richard did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a genuine sound, surprised and almost approving. Well, he said, you certainly speak your mind. I don't see the point in doing otherwise. No, I suppose you wouldn't. Richard signaled the waiter. Shall we order? I find I'm quite hungry. Dinner was a carefully orchestrated interrogation disguised as conversation. Richard asked about Ryan's business, how he'd started it, who his clients were, what his revenue looked like. He asked about Ryan's education, community college, no degree, everything learned through apprenticeships and hands-on work. He asked about his interests, his politics, his views on Chicago's sports teams. Each question was designed to highlight the gap between Ryan's world and Claire's. Each answer was cataloged, assessed, filed away as evidence. But Ryan didn't try to be anything he wasn't. When Richard asked about classical music, Ryan admitted he didn't know much about it. When Richard mentioned a recent charity gala, Ryan said he'd never been to one. When Richard brought up international business trends, Ryan was honest about his limited perspective. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't apologetic. He just was. And somehow that seemed to frustrate Richard more than any defensive posturing would have. "You're very honest about your limitations," Richard observed as their entrees arrived. "No point in pretending to be something I'm not," Ryan said. "I work with my hands. I know metal and wood, stress tolerances and grain patterns. I don't know stock portfolios or corporate strategy. Different kinds of knowledge." "But you must have opinions about Claire's work." Ryan glanced at Claire, who was watching him carefully. "I think she's brilliant at what she does," he said. "I've seen how she handles her company, the decisions she makes, the way she treats her employees. She's built something impressive." "Built something?" Richard's smile was sharp. "She inherited the company from my father." "She inherited a foundation," Ryan corrected gently. "What she's done with it in the past 5 years, that's all her. Revenue up 30%, employee retention above industry standard, innovation in sustainable manufacturing. I may not understand all the details, but I can recognize good work when I see it." Claire's hand found his again under the table. Richard studied them both with those calculating eyes. "You're very supportive." "That's what partners do." "Interesting word choice. Partner, not husband." Ryan shrugged. "Both, hopefully. A good marriage is a partnership." "Is it?" Richard took a sip of his scotch. "My marriage lasted 40 years before my wife passed. I'd describe it more as complementary roles. She managed the home and social obligations. I handled business, each person in their proper sphere." "That worked for you," Ryan said neutrally. "You don't think it would work for you and Claire?" "No." The bluntness made Richard blink. "Why not?" Ryan looked at Claire, really looked at her. "Because she'd suffocate in that life. Claire isn't built to manage someone else's social calendar and smile at fundraisers. She's built to run companies, make decisions, solve problems. Trying to put her in a box marked wife duties would be like trying to cage a bird of prey. Technically possible, but cruel and stupid." Claire's eyes had gone suspiciously bright. Richard set down his glass carefully. "And what about you, Ryan? Are you comfortable being married to a woman who's more successful, more wealthy, more powerful than you'll ever be?" There it was, the real test. The question designed to provoke ego, to make Ryan defensive or angry or small. Ryan thought about Mia, about the 11 years he'd spent being both mother and father, about every diaper he'd changed and parent-teacher conference he'd attended alone, about every time someone had looked at him with pity for being a single dad, as if being present for his child was somehow tragic. "Mr. Vaughn," he said quietly, "I spent 8 years raising a daughter by myself while running a business. I've done midnight feedings and packed school lunches and learned to braid hair from YouTube videos. I've been the only dad at princess tea parties and the only man in Mommy and Me classes. I've had people pat me on the head for doing basic parenting like I deserve a medal for being present in my own kid's life." He met Richard's eyes. "So no, I'm not intimidated by a successful woman. I'm grateful for one. Claire doesn't need me to be more powerful or more wealthy or more anything. She just needs me to show up, be honest, and have her back. That I can do." Silence stretched across the table. Ryan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel Claire's hand trembling slightly in his. Then Richard pushed back his chair. "Excuse me," he said. "I need to make a phone call." He walked away without another word, leaving Ryan and Claire alone at the table. "I'm sorry," Ryan said immediately. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't." Claire's voice was thick. "Don't apologize. That was— Ryan, that was perfect. I probably made him angry." "Good." Claire turned to face him fully. "Do you know what my father's been doing for the past 5 years? Setting me up with suitable men. CEOs, politicians, trust fund heirs, men who smile and say the right things, and would absolutely try to control or diminish me the second we were married. Men who see a successful woman as a challenge to overcome or a trophy to acquire." She laughed, but it was watery. "And you just sat there and told him I'd suffocate in a traditional marriage. Told him I'm built to run companies, not serve tea. like it's the most obvious thing in the world. It is obvious, Ryan said, confused. Anyone who knows you can see that. My father's known me for 38 years and he's never seen it. Claire wiped her eyes quickly. Sorry, this is more emotional than I expected. We can leave if you want. You've proven there's a husband. Mission accomplished. No, Claire's voice firmed. No, we stay. We finish this dinner. We smile. We make it absolutely clear that I'm not alone and I'm not weak, and I don't need his approval or his rescue. She squeezed his hand. Can you handle more of his tests? Ryan thought about the $50,000, about Mia's medical bills now paid in full, about the fact that he'd agreed to see this through. I can handle it. Richard returned 10 minutes later, his expression unreadable. He sat down, finished his scotch, and ordered another. Tell me about your business plans, Ryan, he said. Do you intend to expand, hire employees, or are you content to remain small scale? And the interrogation continued, question after question, pressure after pressure, each one designed to find the breaking point. But Ryan didn't break. He answered honestly about his modest ambitions, maybe hiring an apprentice in a year or two, maybe expanding his client base, but nothing grandiose. He talked about work-life balance, about being present for Mia, about choosing a life he could sustain rather than scale. He could see the disapproval in Richard's eyes. This was a man who valued empire building, who saw success only in expansion and domination. Ryan's contentment with a small shop and a good life was incomprehensible to him, but Ryan didn't care. At 10:15, Richard finally signaled for the check. Ryan reached for his wallet automatically. It was pure instinct, even though he knew he couldn't actually afford to split a bill here. Richard waved him off. Don't be ridiculous. This is my treat. Thank you, sir. Richard stood, straightening his jacket. Claire, I'd like to speak with you privately before I leave town tomorrow. My hotel, 10 a.m. It wasn't a request. Of course, Claire said smoothly. Richard turned to Ryan, extending his hand. Ryan, it's been illuminating. Ryan shook his hand. Likewise, sir. Take care of my daughter. I intend to. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to determine whether Ryan was still playing a role. Then he nodded curtly and walked away, leaving them alone. Claire exhaled slowly. We did it. Did we? He didn't seem convinced. He's never convinced. That's his superpower. Absolute skepticism. But you... She shook her head. You were amazing. Everything you said, the way you handled him, Ryan, I couldn't have written a better script. I wasn't following a script. That was just the truth. I know. Claire smiled. That's why it worked. They walked out together into the cool Chicago night. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean and glistening. The town car was waiting. I should get home, Ryan said, checking his watch. Mrs. Chen charges overtime after 10:30. Right, of course. Claire hesitated. Ryan, I know you said one dinner, and you fulfilled your end of the bargain, but my father wants to meet tomorrow. If he's asking for that meeting, it means he's still planning something, and you want me there. Would you? I'd pay you for your time, obviously. Another evening rate, whatever you think is fair. Ryan thought about Mia at home, about his workshop waiting, about the careful life he'd built that didn't include corporate warfare and desperate deceptions. But he also thought about Claire's hand trembling in his during dinner, about the way her eyes had brightened when he'd defended her, about the loneliness he'd recognized because he carried the same weight. Tell me the time and place, he said. I'll be there. Ryan got home at 11:15, apologizing profusely to Mrs. Chen and paying her double the overtime. Mia was asleep in her bed, her chemistry textbook still open on her nightstand. Ryan closed it gently, turned off her light, and stood there for a long moment watching her breathe. This was real. This was what mattered. Everything else, Claire's world of power plays and corporate battles, that was temporary. A job. A strange, surreal job that paid well and would be over soon. He just had to remember that. In his own room, Ryan took off the suit and tie, changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt. The wedding ring sat on his dresser, catching the light. He picked it up, turning it in his fingers. For 4 hours tonight, he'd been married. For 4 hours, He'd had a partner. For 4 hours, he'd remembered what it felt like to have someone beside him facing down the world's difficulties. It had been nice. It had been dangerous. Ryan put the ring in his sock drawer and tried not to think about how much he'd liked wearing it. Ryan's phone buzzed at 6:30 the next morning, jarring him from uneasy dreams about platinum wedding rings and cold-eyed corporate titans. The text was from Claire, brief and direct. Meeting at 10 a.m., Palmer House, Presidential Suite. Dress code same as last night. I'm sorry to ask this of you again. He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. I'll be there. Mia was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and her chemistry textbook open again. She looked up when Ryan shuffled in, exhaustion written across his face. Did your dinner go late? She asked. Later than I planned. Ryan started the coffee maker, watching the dark liquid drip with desperate anticipation. How was the test? Easy. I knew all of it. Mia studied him with those two perceptive eyes. You look tired. I am tired. But the client meeting went well? Ryan thought about Richard Vaughn's calculating stare, about Claire's hand trembling in his, about agreeing to wade even deeper into waters he didn't understand. It went complicated. Is complicated good or bad? I'm not sure yet, kiddo. Mrs. Chen agreed to come over at 9. Bless her patient soul. Ryan showered and put on the same suit from last night, grateful he'd had the foresight to hang it up properly. The tie fought him again until he gave up and looked up a tutorial video on his phone, feeling ridiculous but determined. When he emerged from his bedroom, Mia looked up from her breakfast and frowned. You're wearing the fancy clothes again. Same client. Follow-up meeting. Dad. Mia set down her spoon. Is everything really okay? You never have client meetings 2 days in a row, and you never wear suits. Ryan sat down across from his daughter, coffee mug warming his hands. This was the tightrope he walked every day, protecting her from worry while respecting her intelligence enough not to lie. The truth is, this client has a complicated situation. They need my help with something outside my normal work, and they're paying well for it. Well enough that I could handle some bills that have been stressing me out. He met her eyes. But it's temporary. Maybe 1 more day after this, maybe 2. Then everything goes back to normal. Is it legal? What? Yes, it's legal. Mia, just checking. On TV, when people are being all secretive about money, it's usually something illegal. Despite everything, Ryan laughed. Fair point, but no, this is completely legal. Just unusual and kind of awkward, but legal. Mia seemed to accept this. Okay, but Dad, if you need to talk about it, I'm a good listener. Ryan reached across and squeezed her hand. I know you are. You're the best listener I've got. The town car arrived at 9:30. Ryan kissed Mia goodbye, reminded Mrs. Chen about the emergency numbers he'd already reminded her about 1,000 times, and climbed into the leather-scented interior, feeling like an imposter in his own life. The Palmer House was old-world elegance, all marble and gold leaf, and the kind of hushed opulence that made Ryan hyper-aware of his off-the-rack suit. The elevator to the presidential suite required a key card, which the concierge provided after a discreet phone call upstairs. Ryan rode up alone, watching floor numbers climb, and tried to prepare himself for whatever fresh hell Richard Vaughn had planned. Claire opened the door before he could knock. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes despite professional makeup, her hair pulled back severely. She wore another suit, charcoal gray this time, like armor. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I know this is beyond what you agreed to. What's the situation? Claire gestured him inside. The suite was enormous, decorated in cream and gold, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Richard stood by those windows, his back to them, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in clipped tones about quarterly projections and board votes. He called me at midnight, Claire murmured, said he'd been thinking about our dinner, said he wanted to discuss my marriage more thoroughly before he returned to New York. Her voice dropped even lower. He knows something's wrong, Ryan. I can feel it. He's just trying to figure out what. So we stick to the story. It's more than that. Claire's eyes were shadowed. He's going to push, really push. He'll try to separate us, ask questions designed to catch inconsistencies. He might bring up things from my past, try to make you doubt me or the situation. She paused. I need you to know, whatever he says, whatever he implies, I never meant for this to become so complicated. This was supposed to be one dinner, but it's not anymore. No, it's not. Richard ended his call and turned to face them. His expression was unreadable, but there was something predatory in his eyes. Ryan, punctual. I appreciate that. He gestured to the seating area. Please, sit. I've ordered breakfast. I assume you haven't eaten yet. A rolling cart laden with coffee, pastries, fruit, and what looked like an entire omelet station sat near the windows. It was the kind of casual display of wealth that made Ryan's $50,000 payment feel quaint. Thank you, sir, Ryan said, accepting coffee and nothing else. His stomach was too tight for food. Richard prepared his own plate with deliberate care, each movement calculated. Claire sat beside Ryan on the sofa, maintaining careful distance, not so far as to seem estranged, not so close as to seem performative. I spent some time last night thinking about our conversation, Richard began, settling into an armchair across from them. You're an interesting man, Ryan, straightforward, honest about your limitations, not particularly ambitious. It was phrased like an observation, but Ryan heard the insult underneath. I'm ambitious about the things that matter to me, Ryan said calmly. My daughter's happiness, quality work, building something sustainable. Just not ambitious in the way you mean. And what way is that? Empire building, expansion for its own sake, wealth accumulation beyond what's needed for security and comfort. Ryan sipped his coffee. Those are fine goals if they're yours. They're just not mine. Richard's eyes narrowed. Yet you married a woman whose entire life is built around those very things. No, Ryan said. Claire's life is built around creating something excellent and protecting it. There's a difference between building an empire and being a good steward of what you've inherited. Claire's hand moved almost imperceptibly closer to his on the sofa. Interesting distinction, Richard said. Tell me, Ryan, when exactly did you fall in love with my daughter? The question came like a knife, quick and precise. Ryan felt Claire tense beside him. They hadn't discussed this. They hadn't prepared an answer about love, about feelings, about the emotional architecture that was supposed to support their fabricated marriage. Ryan thought about Claire storming into his workshop, soaked and desperate. He thought about her hand in his at dinner, trembling but determined. He thought about the way her eyes had gone bright when he'd defended her right to be more than decorative. It wasn't a single moment, he said slowly, feeling his way through truth and fiction. It was watching her work, the way she thinks through problems, the way she treats people, not based on what they can do for her, but on whether they do their jobs well. I've seen her talk to janitors with the same respect she gives her executives. I've watched her defend employees against unfair criticism. She's brilliant and driven, yes, but she's also fundamentally decent. That's what made me fall. Richard studied him like a specimen under glass. How poetic. And when did this observation turn into romance? About a year after we met, Claire interjected smoothly. We'd been working together professionally. Ryan came to deliver a final piece for the office, and I asked if he wanted to grab dinner, just as a thank you for good work. We ended up talking for 4 hours. Ryan looked at her, and Claire looked back, and something passed between them, an understanding that the best lies were built on foundations of truth. We started seeing each other quietly after that, Claire continued. Nothing serious at first. Coffee when we both had time, long phone conversations about everything and nothing. Ryan was cautious because of Mia. I was cautious because of my position. But it grew. And 6 months ago, you decided to get married, Richard said flatly, without telling anyone, without a proper wedding or announcement. We went to the courthouse, Ryan said. Judge Martinez. It was just us and 2 witnesses we pulled from the hallway. We signed papers, exchanged rings, and went back to work. He met Richard's eyes. Neither of us needed the performance. We just wanted the commitment. How remarkably convenient, Richard said. A marriage with no witnesses, no photos, no trail of evidence beyond some paperwork. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Claire's voice turned to ice. Are you calling my husband a liar? I'm calling this situation suspicious. You've never mentioned Ryan before, never brought him to family events or company functions. You've kept him completely separate from every other aspect of your life. Richard leaned forward. That's not how real marriages work, Claire. Real marriages integrate. They're messy and public and impossible to compartmentalize. Real marriages also respect boundaries, Claire shot back. Ryan has a daughter to protect and a business to run. He doesn't want or need to be dragged into corporate politics and society gossip. I've respected that. Or you've hidden him because this whole thing is a performance designed to keep me from interfering in your life. The words landed like a punch. Ryan saw Claire flinch, saw her armor crack just slightly. Mr. Vaughn, Ryan said quietly, you don't believe your daughter would marry someone like me. I understand that. I'm not from your world. I don't have the right education or connections or net worth. By your standards, I'm nobody. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Ryan set down his coffee cup. But here's what I don't understand. Why does it matter? Even if Claire and I are exactly what we say we are, you'd still think she married wrong. You'd still think she should be with some corporate prince who looks good in photos and knows which fork to use. So whether this marriage is real or fake, you're going to oppose it either way. Richard's expression darkened. I want what's best for my daughter. No, Ryan said. You want control over your daughter. There's a difference. The silence that followed was dangerous. Claire had gone very still. Richard's face had turned to stone. Then Richard stood, walked to the windows, and stared out at the lake. Claire, he said without turning around, I'd like to speak with Ryan alone. Absolutely not. It wasn't a request. And I'm not leaving. Claire's voice was steel. Anything you have to say to my husband, you can say in front of me. Richard turned, and the mask of civility had fallen away. What remained was pure calculation, pure threat. Fine, then I'll be direct. He looked at Ryan. How much? Ryan blinked. I'm sorry? How much is she paying you to play this role? 50,000? 100? What's the going rate for a fake husband these days? The words hit like a physical blow. Ryan felt his face flush, felt anger rising hot in his chest. Beside him, Claire had gone pale. That's enough, she said. No, it's not nearly enough. Richard's voice was cold. I've spent the past 12 hours having you investigated, Ryan Cole. I know about your struggling business. I know about your daughter's medical bills. I know you recently deposited $50,000 into your account, exactly one day before you magically appeared as Claire's husband. Ryan's stomach dropped through the floor. I know you're desperate for money, Richard continued relentlessly. I know you're behind on your mortgage, behind on your truck payments, barely keeping your head above water. And I know my daughter is perfectly capable of hiring someone to play a role if it serves her purposes. Dad, stop. So I'll ask again, Mr. Cole. How much is she paying you? And more importantly, what will it cost me to make you disappear? The question hung in the air, ugly and transactional. Ryan sat there, feeling the world he'd carefully built collapse around him. Because Richard wasn't wrong. Ryan was desperate for money. He had been paid $50,000. He was playing a role. The only lie was calling it fake. I'm not disappearing, Ryan said quietly. Everyone has a price. Maybe. But mine isn't money. Ryan stood, facing Richard directly. You want to know the truth? Yes, Claire paid me. Yes, I needed the money desperately. Yes, this started as a transaction. But you know what I've learned in the past 24 hours? Your daughter is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. She's brilliant and kind and stronger than anyone I know. And you, her own father, are so busy trying to control her that you can't see what's right in front of you. Ryan, you don't have to, Claire started. Yes, I do. Ryan kept his eyes on Richard. You asked when I fell in love with her. You want the honest answer? I'm not sure I have yet. This started as a job, but watching her handle your interrogation last night, watching her refuse to be small or apologetic or anything less than exactly who she is, that's when I started to understand why this matters. Not the money. Her. Richard's expression was unreadable. That's a pretty speech. It's the truth. You don't have to believe it. I don't. Richard pulled out his phone, tapped something, then turned the screen toward Ryan. It showed a bank transfer authorization for $200,000. This is my counteroffer. Take it, walk away today, and I'll forget this conversation ever happened. Refuse, and I'll destroy you. I'll audit your business, tie you up in legal fees you can't afford, make sure every client you have knows you're a fraud. I'll make your life hell. Ryan stared at the number, $200,000. That was life-changing money. That was Mia's college fund, his mortgage paid off, breathing room for years. That was also surrender. Claire stood beside him, her face stricken. Ryan, you don't have to. I never meant for this. I know. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the CEO armor to the woman underneath. Scared, alone, fighting battles on every front with no one watching her back. He thought about Mia, about the values he was trying to teach her, about standing up for people who needed it, about not being bought. Mr. Vaughn, Ryan said carefully, I appreciate the offer. That's a lot of money, more than I've ever had at once, but I'm going to decline. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Ryan turned to Claire. I'm sorry I can't stay for the rest of this conversation. I need to get home to my daughter. He walked toward the door, heart pounding, half expecting Richard to physically stop him. But the older man just watched him go, eyes calculating. At the door, Ryan paused and looked back. For what it's worth, Mr. Vaughn, I think you're underestimating your daughter. She doesn't need your protection or your approval. She just needs you to trust her. But you're so convinced she'll fail that you can't see she's already succeeding. Then he left, walking through the opulent hallway with his head high and his hands shaking. The elevator ride down felt like falling. Ryan's phone buzzed, Claire calling, but he couldn't answer yet. He needed air, needed space, needed to think about what he'd just done. He'd turned down $200,000. He'd made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in Chicago. He'd admitted to being paid for a fake marriage while simultaneously claiming real feelings. He was either the bravest man alive or the stupidest. Ryan made it outside before his phone rang again. This time he answered. Ryan, please. Claire's voice was ragged. I'm so sorry. I never thought he'd investigate you. I never meant for you to be threatened. Claire, breathe. A shaky exhale. Where are you? Standing outside your hotel, looking like an idiot. Stay there. I'm coming down. She appeared 3 minutes later, still in her suit but looking disheveled, her carefully controlled exterior cracking. She walked right up to Ryan and stopped, breathing hard. You turned down $200,000, she said. I did. Why? Ryan thought about how to answer that. Because he'd meant what he said upstairs. Watching her refuse to be diminished had moved something in him. Because walking away would have felt like betraying something fragile and real. Because he was tired of making decisions based purely on survival. Because some things aren't for sale, he said finally. Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. He's going to come after you. Everything he said, the audits, the legal trouble, he'll do it. I know. So why? I made a deal with you, Ryan said simply. One dinner, you said. Then it became 2 meetings. Now it's whatever this is. But I don't back out of deals because they get harder than expected, and I don't let people get threatened alone if I can help it. You barely know me. Yeah. Ryan smiled slightly. Weird, isn't it? Claire laughed, but it came out as something close to a sob. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for control. Hey, Ryan said gently, it's okay to be upset. I've been upset for 5 years, since the day my grandfather died and my father started this campaign to prove I'm not capable. She dropped her hand, revealing red-rimmed eyes. I thought if I could just be perfect enough, strong enough, successful enough, he'd finally see me. But he never will. To him, I'll always be the woman who needs rescuing. Then stop trying to prove yourself to him. Prove yourself to you. Easy to say. Not really. I spent 3 years trying to get my ex-wife to come back, trying to be whatever she needed before I realized she was never coming back because she didn't want to. Some people don't want to see you, Claire, and killing yourself to change their mind just means you've killed yourself. Claire wiped her eyes. How did you get so wise? Therapy, lots of therapy, Turns out being abandoned by your wife and left to raise a kid alone comes with some emotional baggage. Ryan checked his watch. Look, I need to get home. Mrs. Chen charges by the hour, and I've already maxed out her patients this week. But we should talk, really talk, about what happens next. What do you mean? Your father thinks this is fake. He's going to keep digging, keep pushing, keep trying to expose us. We need to decide if we're going to keep fighting, or if I bow out now before it gets worse. Claire's expression hardened. I don't want you to bow out. Even though it puts me at risk, I'll protect you. I have resources, lawyers. Claire, Ryan caught her hand. I'm not asking for protection. I'm asking what you actually want, not what you need to win against your father, not what serves some strategy. What do you want? She looked down at their joined hands. I want someone in my corner. Someone who doesn't want something from me. Someone who shows up because they choose to, not because they're being paid or because there's some angle. She met his eyes. I want what I felt last night at dinner when you defended me. I want that to be real. It was real, Ryan said quietly. The feeling was real. The marriage is fake, but what I said about you, that was all true. Then let's make it real. Ryan blinked. What? Not the marriage, not yet. But this, us. Let's try actually dating. No transaction, no performance. Just two people seeing if there's something worth exploring. Claire's voice was steady now, determined. My father's going to keep fighting either way. At least this way we'd be fighting for something real instead of a lie. Ryan thought about Mia, about his carefully controlled life, about the fact that Claire Vaughn lived in a different stratosphere of existence. He thought about corporate warfare and hostile takeovers and complications he couldn't begin to understand. Then he thought about Claire's hand in his, about the way she'd looked when he'd refused to be diminished by her father, about the loneliness he recognized because it mirrored his own. I have conditions, he said. Name them. You meet Mia properly. No pretending, no performance. You meet my daughter as someone I'm dating, and if she's uncomfortable or doesn't like you or thinks this is a bad idea, we slow down or stop. Agreed. So you come to my world as much as I come to yours. I can't do fancy dinners every night. I live in a small house in a working-class neighborhood. I eat leftovers and watch basic cable. That's my reality. I want to see your reality. And we're honest with each other about everything. No more half-truths or strategic omissions. If we're doing this, we're doing it for real. Claire squeezed his hand. Honest truth? I'm terrified. I haven't actually dated anyone in 4 years. I don't know how to do this without it being a performance or a strategy. I'm going to mess it up. Honest truth? Ryan squeezed back. I'm terrified too. The last woman I trusted destroyed me. I don't know if I know how to let someone in anymore, and I'm definitely going to mess it up. They stood there on the sidewalk, two people from completely different worlds, holding hands like teenagers. So we'll mess it up together, Claire said. Together, Ryan agreed. But first, I really need to get home before Mrs. Chen files for divorce from babysitting duties. Claire laughed, a real laugh this time, bright and genuine. Go, take care of your daughter. Can I call you tonight? Yeah, after 8, when Mia's in bed. It's a date. Ryan walked away, got into the waiting town car, and tried to process what had just happened. He'd turned down life-changing money, made an enemy of a corporate titan, and agreed to actually date the woman he'd been pretending to marry. His life had gone from controlled and predictable to absolute chaos in less than 48 hours. And the strangest part? He didn't want to go back. The house was quiet when Ryan got home, Mrs. Chen reading a magazine while Mia did homework at the kitchen table. Everything looked exactly as he'd left it. Worn furniture, scuffed floors, the life he'd built from nothing. How was your meeting? Mia asked, looking up from her math worksheet. Ryan hung up his jacket, loosened his tie. Complicated, but productive. Same client? Same client. Mia studied him with those two knowing eyes. You look different. Different how? Less stressed, more, I don't know. Awake. Ryan thought about Claire's hand in his, about choosing principle over money, about agreeing to try something real and terrifying. Maybe I am, he said. Come on, let's look at that homework. Math was never my strong suit, but two heads are better than one. They sat together at the table, working through problems, and Ryan felt the normalcy of it settle around him like comfort. This was his foundation, this house, this daughter, this simple life. Everything with Claire was extra, complicated and risky, and probably ill-advised. But maybe, just maybe, worth it. That night, after Mia was in bed, Ryan's phone rang at exactly 8:15. "Hi," Claire said. And her voice was softer than he'd heard it before. "Hi yourself. I've been thinking about your conditions, about meeting Mia properly and coming to your world." A pause. "I'm nervous." "Good. You should be. Mia's an excellent judge of character, and she doesn't suffer fools." "Now I'm more nervous." Ryan smiled, settling into his worn couch. "Tell me something real. Something you don't tell people in your regular life." "Like what?" "Anything. Something that's just yours." Silence for a moment. Then, "I hate classical music." Ryan laughed. "What?" "Everyone in my world is supposed to love opera and symphonies, and I just don't. I find it boring. I'd rather listen to classic rock or old country music, but I go to the opera 6 times a year because it's expected, and I smile and pretend to appreciate it. That's terrible." "I know. What about you? What's something real?" Ryan thought. "I'm a terrible cook. Everything I make for Mia is from a recipe I follow religiously, because if I improvise, it's a disaster. She thinks I'm this great dad who makes homemade meals, but really, I'm just good at following instructions." "I think following instructions to feed your daughter homemade meals instead of defaulting to takeout still makes you a great dad." "Maybe." They talked for 2 hours. About nothing important and everything important. About Mia's science fair project and Claire's frustration with her board of directors. About Ryan's fear of not being enough and Claire's exhaustion from always having to be everything. It felt like the conversation they'd supposedly had that turned professional acquaintance into romance. Except this time, it was real. "I should let you sleep," Claire said finally, though she didn't sound like she wanted to hang up. "Yeah, tomorrow's a work day." "Ryan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for today, for choosing to stay even when you had every reason to walk away." "Thank you for giving me a reason to stay." After they hung up, Ryan sat in the dark living room and thought about the fact that he'd just had the best conversation of his adult life with a woman he'd met 48 hours ago. His phone buzzed with a text. "Dinner Saturday. Your choice of place. My treat. See." Ryan smiled and typed back. "There's a neighborhood bar I like. Food's good, beer's cheap, music's loud. Your kind of place?" "It's about to be," came the reply. And Ryan realized with a mix of terror and excitement that he was actually doing this, dating Claire Vaughn, stepping into something real and complicated and utterly unpredictable. He just hoped Mia approved, because if his daughter didn't like Claire, if she sensed something wrong or forced or performative, that would be the end of it. No amount of connection or chemistry or possibility would override his daughter's well-being. Mia came first. She always came first. But maybe, just maybe, there was room for something else too. Ryan went to bed that night with his mind spinning, falling asleep thinking about platinum rings and honest conversations, and the dangerous, exhilarating feeling of freefall. Saturday came faster than Ryan expected, bringing with it a knot of anxiety that settled in his chest and refused to leave. He'd spent the past 3 days working in his shop, trying to focus on a custom staircase railing for a client in Lincoln Park, but his mind kept drifting to Claire. They texted throughout the week, short messages that felt like breadcrumbs leading somewhere he couldn't quite see. She'd sent him a photo of her office view at sunset. He'd sent her a picture of Mia's science fair project, a working model of the water cycle that had taken over their kitchen table. The texts were easy. Tonight would be harder. Ryan had chosen Danny's Tavern deliberately, a neighborhood institution 3 blocks from his house that had been serving the same menu since 1987. It was the kind of place where the bartender knew your name and your usual drink, where the jukebox still took quarters, where the wood floors were scarred from decades of work boots, and the walls were covered with photos of local sports teams and regulars who'd passed on. It was Ryan's world, distilled into one room that smelled like beer and fried food and belonging. If Claire couldn't handle Danny's, she couldn't handle him. He arrived early, sliding into his usual booth in the back corner where he could see both doors. Danny himself was behind the bar, a man in his 60s with tattooed forearms and a weathered face that had seen everything twice. Ryan Cole, wearing a button-down shirt on a Saturday, Danny called out. Must be a special occasion. Something like that. This about the woman who called earlier, asking if we had valet parking? Ryan's stomach dropped. Someone called asking about valet? Danny grinned. Relax. I told her we've got street parking and a dream. She laughed, said she'd figure it out. He brought over Ryan's usual beer without being asked. She sounds fancy. She is. And you're bringing her here instead of some downtown place with cloth napkins? I'm bringing her here because this is real. If she can't handle real, better to know now. Danny nodded approvingly. Smart man. Fair warning, though. Tommy's here with the crew from the electricians' union. They've had a few rounds, and they're feeling philosophical about the Bears. Could get loud. Wouldn't be Danny's without it. Ryan nursed his beer and tried not to watch the door. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Parking accomplished. Walking over now. Fair warning. I'm nervous. He typed back, Me too. It's the booth in the back corner. I'll be the one trying not to panic. 3 dots appeared, then, We'll panic together. When Claire walked through the door, every head in the bar turned. Not because she was dressed inappropriately, she'd clearly done her research, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, but because she carried herself differently than anyone who usually walked into Danny's. Even in casual clothes, even trying to blend in, there was something about Claire Vaughn that announced she came from somewhere else. She spotted Ryan and smiled, and he watched the nervousness flicker across her face before she buried it under determination. She wove through the tables, ignoring the curious stares, and slid into the booth across from him. Hi, she said. Hi yourself. Ryan studied her, looking for signs of judgment or discomfort. You found it okay? GPS and sheer willpower. Your neighborhood is charming. It's working class and you know it. Claire's smile turned genuine. Okay, yes, but there's a difference between working class and charming, and yours manages both. I passed 3 houses with Christmas lights still up in January and a corner store advertising world's best sandwiches. They're not lying. That place makes a roast beef sub that'll change your life. I'll have to try it sometime. Danny appeared with a knowing look. You must be the valet parking lady. Claire laughed, and Ryan was relieved to hear it sounded natural. That's me. Sorry about that. I clearly didn't do my research properly. First time in a place like this? Is it that obvious? Little bit. But you're here, which counts for something. Danny pulled out his order pad. What can I get you? Claire glanced at Ryan's beer. What are you drinking? Local amber ale, nothing fancy. Then I'll have the same, and... She scanned the laminated menu quickly. The burger, medium, with everything. Danny nodded approvingly. Woman after my own heart. Ryan, your usual? Yeah, thanks, Danny. After Danny left, Claire leaned back against the cracked vinyl booth and exhaled. Okay, I'm here. In your world. How am I doing so far? You ordered the burger. That's a good start. I was terrified I'd say something embarrassing like, do you have a wine list, or ask if the vegetables are locally sourced? Do you normally ask if vegetables are locally sourced? At the places I usually eat? Yes. Claire made a face. I've become one of those people, haven't I? The kind who talks about flavor profiles and knows which vineyards had a good year. Nothing wrong with knowing about wine. There is when you've forgotten how to just enjoy a beer and a burger without analyzing it. Their drinks arrived and Claire took a sip, then another. This is good. Really good. Why don't I drink beer anymore? Because somewhere along the way you decided you had to perform being sophisticated? Claire set down her glass carefully. That's probably more accurate than I'd like to admit. She looked around the bar, taking in the locals, the worn-in comfort, the easy camaraderie. This is your regular place? Since I moved to the neighborhood, I come here maybe once a month, usually after finishing a big project. It's my version of decompression. Do you bring Mia? Sometimes for lunch on weekends. Danny makes her grilled cheese and pretends to be grumpy about cutting off the crusts, but he always does it. Something soft crossed Claire's face. You've built a real life here. A community. It's taken years. But yeah, this is home. The burgers arrived, massive and dripping, the kind of meal that required strategic planning to eat. Claire stared at hers for a moment, then picked it up with both hands and took a bite. Juice ran down her fingers and she grabbed a napkin, laughing. "Oh my God," she said after swallowing. "This is incredible. Danny doesn't do fancy, but he does do flavor." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the noise of the bar filling the spaces. From across the room, Tommy and his union crew launched into a heated debate about quarterback statistics. Someone fed the jukebox, and Springsteen's Thunder Road filled the air. "So," Claire said finally, wiping her hands, "we should probably talk about what happened this week." Ryan had been expecting this. "Your father?" "Among other things. He's back in New York, but he's not done. I've gotten 3 calls from board members asking pointed questions about my personal life. He's laying groundwork." "For what?" "A vote of no confidence, most likely. If he can convince the board that I'm unstable or making reckless decisions, they can force me out of operational control." Claire's voice was steady, but Ryan heard the tension underneath. "He's using our marriage, real or fake, as evidence that I'm not thinking clearly. Because you married beneath you. Because I kept it secret, supposedly. Because it shows I'm hiding things and making impulsive choices." She met his eyes. "The irony is that he's right. I did make an impulsive choice. I just made it for the right reasons." "What reasons?" "I was tired of being alone. Tired of fighting every battle by myself. Tired of having no one I could trust." Claire's voice dropped. "When I walked into your shop that night, I was desperate. But it wasn't just about my father. It was about wanting someone in my corner, even if I had to pay for it." Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. "You're not paying anymore." "No. Now I'm just terrified you'll realize I'm more trouble than I'm worth." "Claire, I'm serious, Ryan. My father is going to come after you. He's already started. I've heard through back channels that he's had people looking into your business, your finances, anything he can use as leverage." She squeezed his hand. "You could still walk away. Take the high road, claim we tried dating and it didn't work out. I'd back you up. I'd make sure you were protected." Ryan thought about the past week, about the late-night phone calls where they'd talked until his phone battery died, about the way Claire's voice had sounded when she'd told him about her grandfather teaching her about metalwork in his factory when she was young. He thought about how she'd asked thoughtful questions about Mia, about single parenting, about the terror and joy of raising a child alone. "I'm not walking away," he said. "Even though this is going to get worse before it gets better? Even though..." "Why?" Ryan considered this. "Because I've spent 8 years playing it safe, building a small life, taking no risks, keeping everything controlled and predictable. And it's been good. I've given Mia stability, built a business, survived. But surviving isn't the same as living. And this feels like living." Claire's eyes had gone bright. "That's the most terrifying and wonderful thing anyone's ever said to me." "Yeah, well, I'm new at this honesty thing. Give me time to screw it up." She laughed, but it was watery. "We're a disaster, aren't we? 2 people who have no idea what they're doing, stumbling into something that could destroy both our lives." "Probably, but at least we're honest about it." Danny appeared to clear their plates, took one look at their joined hands and Claire's suspiciously bright eyes, and tactfully retreated without comment. "I need to tell you something else," Claire said quietly. "About my father's threats. He's not just going after you professionally. He's threatening to expose the original arrangement, the fact that I paid you to pretend to be my husband. If that becomes public, it'll ruin both of us. Me for being manipulative and dishonest, you for being a fraud." Ryan felt ice settle in his stomach. "Can he prove it?" "The bank transfer is in my records. The timing is suspicious. If he spins it right to the media..." Claire's voice trailed off. "Corporate CEO pays struggling businessman to pose as husband. It's a headline that writes itself. So what do we do?" "We have 2 options. 1, we end this now, publicly and cleanly. I announce we tried dating but decided we're better as friends. It'll still hurt my credibility, but it might minimize the damage. And option 2? Claire met his eyes. "We go all in. We stop calling this fake. We date for real, publicly. We integrate our lives the way real couples do. We give my father nothing to use against us because we're not hiding anything. You want to actually date me? Publicly? With cameras and media and all the attention that comes with being with you? I want to try, if you're willing. Claire's voice was steady now, determined. I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting my father dictate how I live my life. If we're going to do this, let's do it honestly. No more pretending, no more performance. Just two people trying to figure out if there's something real here. Ryan thought about what that would mean. Stepping into Claire's world completely, accepting the scrutiny and judgment that came with it. Exposing Mia to media attention and questions. Trading his carefully controlled privacy for something uncertain and potentially devastating. He also thought about Claire's hand in his, about the way she'd looked ordering a burger and drinking cheap beer like it was the best meal she'd had in years, about how she'd called him every night just to talk, asking nothing of him except his time and his honesty. I have conditions, he said. Claire smiled slightly. You always do. Mia meets you first. Before we go public, before we make any announcements, you meet my daughter properly. We tell her the truth, that we started as a business arrangement, but it became real. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. She deserves honesty. Agreed. And we do this at her pace. If she needs time to adjust, we slow down. If she's uncomfortable with media attention, we find ways to protect her. She's 11, Claire. She didn't sign up for this. I understand. What else? You come to Sunday dinner at my house. Meet Mia in our space, our territory. No performance, no pressure, just spaghetti and conversation and my daughter's brutal honesty. Claire took a shaky breath. I'm terrified of meeting her. Good. You should be. Mia's the most important person in my world. If she doesn't approve, this doesn't happen. What if she hates me? Then we'll deal with it. But Claire? Ryan squeezed her hand. My daughter has excellent instincts. She'll see what I see. Which is? Someone who's been fighting alone for too long. Someone who's strong and scared and trying her best. Mia respects that. They sat there in the noise and warmth of Danny's tavern, holding hands across a scarred table, while around them life continued in all its messy, beautiful normalcy. Someone played Sweet Caroline on the jukebox, and Tommy's crew joined in on the chorus, drunk and joyful and utterly unself-conscious. Claire laughed, wiping her eyes. This is the most surreal date I've ever had. We haven't even gotten to the best part yet. What's the best part? Ryan stood, pulling her up with him. Dancing. It's tradition here. When this song plays, everyone dances. I haven't danced in years. But Ryan was already leading her to the small, cleared space that served as a dance floor, where three other couples swayed to the music. He pulled Claire close, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers, and they moved in a simple two-step that required no skill, just willingness. Relax, he murmured. No one's watching. No one's judging. It's just movement and music. Claire let out a breath and let herself lean into him. She was stiff at first, self-conscious, but gradually she softened, finding the rhythm. Her head came to rest against his shoulder, and Ryan felt something in his chest expand and settle simultaneously. This was real. This was happening. This was terrifying and right and completely insane. The song ended, and they stood there swaying even as the music changed to something faster. Around them, people returned to their tables, but Ryan and Claire remained in their small bubble of space and possibility. Ryan, Claire said against his shoulder, what if we're making a terrible mistake? Then we'll make it together. What if my father destroys you? Then you'll help me rebuild. What if Mia hates me? She won't. But if she's uncomfortable, we'll figure it out. That's what people do, Claire. They figure it out together. She pulled back enough to look at him. I don't know how to do this. How to be in a relationship without strategy or agenda. How to just be. Neither do I. My ex-wife left 8 years ago, and I've been in survival mode ever since. I don't know how to let someone in. I don't know how to trust that they'll stay. So we're both disasters. Seems like it. Claire smiled, and it was the most genuine expression Ryan had ever seen on her face. Want to be disasters together? Yeah, Ryan said. I really do.
They stayed at Danny's for 2 more hours, talking and laughing and existing in a space where corporate battles and media scrutiny and impossible complications didn't matter. Danny brought them another round without being asked. Tommy's crew bought them a shot for being brave enough to slow dance to Neil Diamond. Someone told an elaborate story about a plumbing disaster that had half the bar in tears from laughter.
Claire fit into it all somehow, shedding her CEO armor piece by piece until she was just a woman, laughing at bad jokes and singing along badly to songs she knew all the words to. When they finally left, the night air was cold and clear, and Chicago spread out around them in all its gritty, beautiful complexity. "I should call my car," Claire said, pulling out her phone. "Or you could walk. I'm 3 blocks that way." "Walk? It's safe. Well lit. And it's a nice night." Claire pocketed her phone. "Okay, let's walk." They moved through the quiet streets, past houses with lights in the windows and cars and driveways, past the corner store with its hand-painted sign, past Mrs. Chen's house where Ryan could see her moving around in her kitchen. "This is your neighborhood," Claire said softly. "This is where Mia grew up." "Yeah. It's not much, but it's ours. It's everything." When they reached Ryan's house, a small 2-story with peeling paint and a porch that needed repair, Claire stopped and looked at it like it was the most important building in Chicago. "Can I see inside?" she asked. Ryan hesitated. This was his sanctum, his refuge, the place where he and Mia had built their life. Letting Claire in felt like crossing a threshold he couldn't uncross. But that was the point, wasn't it? All in or all out? "Yeah," he said. "Come on." The house was small and worn but clean, filled with the accumulated debris of life with an 11-year-old. Mia's backpack by the door, her shoes kicked off haphazardly, art projects on the refrigerator held up with magnets. The furniture was mismatched and secondhand. The walls needed paint. The kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people. It was home. Claire moved through the space slowly, taking it all in. She stopped at the refrigerator, studying Mia's artwork, a watercolor of the Chicago skyline, a crayon drawing of Ryan in his workshop, a photo of Ryan and Mia at Navy Pier. "She's talented," Claire said quietly. "She is. She wants to be an architect, or a marine biologist, or a writer. Changes every week. She has time to figure it out." "Yeah." Claire turned to face him. "Thank you for showing me this, for letting me into your real life. It's not much compared to what you're used to. It's everything compared to what I'm used to." Claire's voice was thick with emotion. "You've built something beautiful here, Ryan. Not just a house, but a life. A real, grounded, meaningful life. I have a penthouse with a view of the lake and artwork that costs more than this building, and it's empty, just space and things and no soul. This," she gestured around, "this has soul." Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just pulled her close and held her, this woman from a different world who somehow saw value in his small, ordinary life. "Sunday dinner," Claire said against his chest. "What time?" 5 o'clock. "We eat early because Mia has homework and bedtime routines." "What should I bring?" "Just yourself. And maybe lower your expectations. I'm making spaghetti from a jar and garlic bread from the freezer." Claire laughed. "Perfect." She pulled back and Ryan walked her to the door. On the porch, she turned and kissed him, brief and soft and full of promise. "Thank you for tonight," she said, "for Danny's and dancing and showing me what real looks like. Thank you for ordering a burger and not asking about locally sourced vegetables. Baby steps." Ryan watched her walk to her car, watched her drive away, and stood there on his porch feeling like his life had just shifted on its axis in a way he couldn't undo and didn't want to. Inside, he checked his phone and found a text from Mrs. Chen, who'd been watching Mia. "Your daughter wants to know why you're standing on the porch, grinning like an idiot. I told her you're probably in love. She says that's gross, but she seems pleased. Good night, Ryan." Love. The words sat in his chest like a stone, heavy and undeniable. He wasn't there yet. Not quite. But he could see the path, could feel himself moving towards something that terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. Ryan went inside, paid Mrs. Chen, and found Mia sitting at the kitchen table pretending to read, but clearly waiting for him. How was your meeting? She asked, too casual. It wasn't a meeting. Then what was it? Ryan sat down across from his daughter, looking at her two knowing eyes and her patient expression, and decided that honesty was the only option. It was a date. Mia's eyes widened. A date? You went on a date? I did. With who? Her name is Claire. She's a client who became a friend who became something more. Mia processed this, her face cycling through surprise, curiosity, and something Ryan couldn't quite read. Are you going to see her again? I'd like to, but I need to know how you feel about it first. How I feel about you dating? Yeah. Mia was quiet for a long moment, and Ryan let her think, let her process. This was too important to rush. Is she nice? Mia asked finally. Very nice. Smart, funny, kind. Does she know about me? She knows everything about you, and she wants to meet you, if you're okay with that. When? Sunday dinner. I was thinking of inviting her over for spaghetti. Ryan studied his daughter's face. But only if you're comfortable with it. If you're not ready, we can wait. Mia looked down at her hands. Is this why you've been wearing suits and going to fancy dinners? Yeah, it's complicated, kiddo, but I promise to explain everything when you're ready to hear it. And if I meet her and I don't like her, then we slow down. You're the most important person in my life, Mia. Nothing changes that. Mia looked up, and Ryan saw his ex-wife in her eyes. The same shape, the same color. But everything else was purely Mia, the person she'd become through her own strength and his imperfect parenting. I want to meet her, Mia said quietly. But Dad, I'm scared. Ryan's heart broke a little. Scared of what? What if she's like Mom? What if she seems nice, but then she leaves? There it was, the wound that had never fully healed, the abandonment that had shaped both their lives. Ryan reached across and took Mia's hands. I can't promise she won't leave. I can't promise anything except that I'm being careful and thoughtful, and I won't let anyone hurt you if I can help it. He squeezed her hands gently. But here's what I can tell you about Claire. She's been hurt too. She knows what it's like to be left, and she's not the kind of person who walks away easily. How do you know? Because she's fighting a war she could walk away from tomorrow, but she stays. Because when things got hard, she didn't run. She's brave, Mia, like you. Mia's eyes filled with tears. I just want you to be happy. I am happy. You make me happy. But lonely happy. I see it sometimes, Dad. You try to hide it, but I see. Ryan felt his own eyes burn. When had his daughter become so perceptive, so aware of his hidden struggles? You're right, he admitted. I have been lonely, but that's not your job to fix, kiddo. That's mine. And maybe Claire's? Maybe. If things work out. Mia wiped her eyes. Okay, she can come to Sunday dinner, but I have conditions. Ryan smiled despite the emotion clogging his throat. You sound like me. I learned from the best. Mia's voice firmed. She has to like spaghetti, even though yours is just jar sauce. She can't be mean to Mrs. Chen, and she has to answer my questions honestly, even if they're embarrassing. Deal. Anything else? Yeah. You have to promise that if I really don't like her, you'll listen, not just dismiss my feelings because you like her. I promise. Mia, I will always listen to you. Always. They sat there in the small kitchen, father and daughter, facing changes neither of them had asked for, but both were trying to navigate with honesty and love. Can I ask you something? Mia said quietly. Anything. Do you think you could love her? Like really love her? Ryan thought about Claire laughing at Danny's tavern, about her hand trembling in his during dinner with her father, about the way she'd looked at his small house like it was a palace. Yeah, he said softly. I think I could. That's scary. Terrifying. But also kind of nice? Yeah, kiddo, also kind of nice. Mia nodded solemnly. Okay then, I'll meet her. But if she doesn't like extra cheese on her spaghetti, that's a red flag. Ryan laughed, and the tension broke. Noted, extra cheese is mandatory. That night, after Mia was in bed, Ryan texted Claire. Sunday dinner is confirmed. Mia has agreed to meet you. Fair warning, she has conditions. Claire's reply came immediately. Of course she does. She's your daughter. What are the conditions? You have to like spaghetti, be nice to our neighbor Mrs. Chen, answer embarrassing questions honestly, and appreciate extra cheese. I can do all of that. Ryan? Yeah? I'm honored she's willing to meet me. And terrified. Is it normal to be this nervous about an 11-year-old's approval? Completely normal. She's a tough audience. What if I mess it up? Then you mess it up and we figure it out. That's what people do. That's what you keep saying. Because it's true. Stop overthinking this, Claire. Just be yourself. The version of yourself that danced to Neil Diamond and ordered a burger without asking about grass-fed beef. That version of me might not exist outside Danny's tavern. Then we'll find out Sunday, together. Ryan lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what the hell he was doing. In the span of a week, he'd gone from barely surviving to fake marrying a CEO to actually dating her to introducing her to his daughter. The trajectory was insane, the risks enormous, the potential for disaster absolute. But for the first time in 8 years, he felt alive. Whatever came next, Richard's threats, media scrutiny, the complexity of merging two impossibly different lives, he'd face it. They'd face it, together. And maybe that was enough. Sunday arrived with winter sunlight streaming through Ryan's kitchen windows and a level of anxiety that made his morning coffee taste like dust. He'd been up since 5, cleaning the house with an attention to detail that bordered on obsessive. Every surface had been wiped down, every piece of clutter relocated, every dish washed and put away. By 7, he'd started cooking, making the sauce from scratch instead of using the jar like he'd planned, because somehow that felt important. Mia wandered into the kitchen at 8, took one look at him chopping vegetables with manic precision, and sighed. Dad, you're being weird. I'm not being weird. You're making homemade sauce. You never make homemade sauce. She sat at the table, watching him with those two knowing eyes. You're nervous about Claire coming. Ryan set down the knife. Am I that obvious? You've cleaned the baseboards. You never clean the baseboards. Maybe I just wanted the house to look nice. Dad, Mia's voice was patient. It's okay to be nervous. I'm nervous too. Ryan abandoned the vegetables and sat across from his daughter. You are? Yeah, what if she doesn't like me? What if I say something stupid? What if I mess this up for you? Mia, listen to me. You couldn't mess this up if you tried. You're wonderful and smart and funny, and if Claire can't see that, then she's not the right person. He reached across and squeezed her hand. And for the record, I'm way more worried that you won't like her than the other way around. Really? Really? You're my priority. Always. Mia seemed to absorb this, then nodded. Okay, but can we maybe tone down the cleaning? The house smells like bleach and panic. Ryan laughed despite himself. Fair point. How about we just focus on making decent food and being ourselves? That sounds better? They cooked together for the next few hours, falling into the comfortable rhythm they'd built over years of shared meals. Mia made garlic bread, the real kind, with butter and fresh garlic and parsley from the pot on the windowsill. Ryan worked on the sauce, tasting and adjusting until it was as good as he could make it. The house filled with the smell of cooking, and slowly the anxiety began to ease into something more manageable. At 3 o'clock, Ryan's phone buzzed. Claire's text read, I'm at the store. What kind of wine goes with spaghetti when you're trying to impress an 11-year-old? Please advise. I've been staring at bottles for 20 minutes. Ryan smiled and texted back. Skip the wine. Bring sparkling cider. Mia feels fancy when we have it with dinner. Sparkling cider, I can do that. Anything else? Just yourself. And maybe calm down. You're going to be fine. You don't know that. I have faith. At 4:30, Ryan changed into clean jeans and a button-down shirt. Nice, but not trying too hard. Mia had put on her favorite dress, the blue one with stars that she usually saved for special occasions, and had even let Ryan help her with her hair. You look beautiful, kiddo, Ryan said, and meant it. I want to make a good impression too, Mia admitted. Is that weird? Not even a little bit. Mrs. Chen knocked on the door at 4:45, arriving without being invited, but somehow knowing she was needed. I brought dumplings, she announced, carrying a container into the kitchen. For later. You'll want leftovers after the nervous cooking you've been doing.
She studied Ryan with sharp eyes. The fancy lady is coming? Her name is Claire, and yes. Good. It's time you had someone. Mrs. Chen patted his cheek. I'll stay for a few minutes to say hello, then I'll leave you alone. But I'm next door if you need me. Mrs. Chen, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. This girl, she gestured to Mia. She needs to see what good relationships look like. And you need someone to make sure you don't spiral into panic cooking. Ryan hugged her. This woman who'd become family without ever being asked. Thank you. Claire arrived at exactly 5 o'clock. Ryan watched from the window as she parked her car, something reasonable this time, not the town car, and sat there for a long moment, clearly gathering courage. She was wearing jeans again and a simple sweater, her hair down, minimal makeup. She looked nervous and real, and nothing like the polished CEO he'd first met. Ryan opened the door before she could knock. Hi, he said. Hi. Claire held up a bottle of sparkling cider in a bakery box. I brought cider like you suggested, and I may have panicked and bought tiramisu from that Italian bakery on Taylor Street, even though you said not to bring anything. Mia loves tiramisu. Good, because I stress bought enough for 6 people. Ryan took the items from her hands and set them aside, then pulled her into a quick hug. Breathe. You're going to be fine. You keep saying that, because it's true. He led her inside, and there was Mia, standing in the middle of the living room in her star dress, looking small and brave and terrified. Claire stopped, and Ryan watched something soft cross her face. Hi, Mia, Claire said gently. I'm Claire. It's really nice to finally meet you. Mia studied her with those assessing eyes. Hi. Dad says you're smart and funny and kind. He said that? He did. He also said you know what it's like to be left, and that you're brave like me. Claire's eyes went bright, but she held Mia's gaze. He's right. I do know what that feels like, and I think you're incredibly brave for giving me a chance. I haven't decided if I'm giving you a chance yet, Mia said with 11-year-old bluntness. I'm still evaluating. That's fair. What do you need to know? Mia glanced at Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. She'd prepared questions, he knew. This was her process. Do you actually like spaghetti, or are you just pretending because that's what we're having? Claire smiled. I actually love spaghetti. It's comfort food. My grandfather used to make it for me when I was your age, before he got too busy running his company. I haven't had homemade sauce in years. Dad made it from scratch today. He never does that. Then I'm honored. Second question, Mia continued. Why do you like my dad? The directness of it made Ryan's breath catch. This was the real question, the one that mattered. Claire didn't hesitate. Because he's honest. Because he shows up and does the hard work even when it's difficult. Because he's built a beautiful life with you, and I can see how much he loves you in everything he does. And because when things got complicated and scary, he didn't run. He stayed. Mia absorbed this. Have people run from you before? Yes, more times than I'd like to admit. That's sad. It is. But it taught me to value people who stay. Mrs. Chen chose that moment to emerge from the kitchen, and Claire turned, clearly surprised to find another person there. Mrs. Chen, Ryan said quickly. This is Claire. Claire, this is Mrs. Chen, our neighbor, and basically Mia's honorary grandmother. Mrs. Chen looked Claire up and down with the critical eye of someone who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. So you're the one who's got Ryan wearing suits and making homemade sauce. I suppose I am, Claire said, extending her hand. It's lovely to meet you. Mrs. Chen shook her hand firmly. You treat this family right, you understand? They've been through enough. I understand, and I will. Good. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. You brought tiramisu from Ferrara's? I did. Have you been there? My husband used to take me there for our anniversary. Best tiramisu in Chicago. Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. You have good taste. It was a benediction, Ryan realized, Mrs. Chen's approval given in her own gruff way. I should go, Mrs. Chen said. Let you have your dinner. But Mia, you come get me after if you want to talk, yes? Yes, ma'am, Mia said. After Mrs. Chen left, an awkward silence settled over the living room.
Ryan was about to suggest they eat when Mia spoke again. "One more question," she said to Claire, "and you have to answer honestly." "Okay. Did my dad really marry you, like for real, legally?" Ryan felt the floor drop out from under him. He and Claire had agreed to be honest with Mia, but he hadn't expected her to ask this so directly, so soon. Claire looked at Ryan, and he nodded. This was the moment, truth or nothing. Claire sat down on the couch, at Mia's eye level. "The honest answer is yes and no. Your dad and I got married legally 6 months ago, but it wasn't for the reasons people usually get married." "What reasons was it for?" "My father was trying to take my company away from me. He thought I was weak because I wasn't married, because I didn't have a family. So I asked your dad to pretend to be my husband for one dinner, just to prove I wasn't alone." Mia's eyes were wide. "So it was fake?" "It started fake," Claire said carefully. "I paid your dad to come to that dinner and play a role, and it was just supposed to be one night. But then my father pushed harder and things got complicated, and somewhere in all of that," she glanced at Ryan, "somewhere in all of that, it stopped being fake, at least for me." "So you really like my dad? It's not just pretend?" "I really like your dad. More than I expected to. More than is probably wise given how complicated everything is." Mia looked at Ryan. "Is that true? Do you really like her?" Ryan sat down on Mia's other side. "Yeah, kiddo, I really do. And I know this is confusing and weird, and I'm sorry we didn't tell you everything from the beginning, but we wanted to figure out what this was before we brought you into it." "Are you still married?" "Legally, yes, but we're treating it like we're dating, getting to know each other for real, no pretending." Mia was quiet for a long moment, processing. Ryan could see her brilliant mind working through the information, sorting truth from fiction, trust from betrayal. "Okay," she said finally. "I have more questions, but they can wait. Can we eat now?" "I'm starving." Relief flooded through Ryan. "Yeah, let's eat." Dinner was awkward at first, everyone too careful with their words and their movements. But gradually, as the food was passed and wine, sparkling cider, was poured, the tension began to ease. Claire complimented the sauce with genuine enthusiasm. Mia explained her science fair project in elaborate detail, complete with hand gestures. Ryan watched them interact and felt something in his chest expand. "So Claire," Mia said, twirling spaghetti on her fork, "what's it like being a CEO?" "Honestly, exhausting. Exciting, terrifying, all at once." "Do you boss people around all day?" Claire laughed. "Sometimes, but mostly I make decisions and try to solve problems and hope I'm doing the right thing." "Like a superhero, but for business. More like a very stressed problem solver with nice clothes." Mia considered this. "Dad says you're brilliant. Your dad is biased. He also says you're fighting a war with your father." Claire glanced at Ryan, who shrugged. They'd agreed on honesty. "That's true," Claire said. "My father doesn't think I'm capable of running my company. He's trying to take it away from me." "That's mean." "It is, but I'm not giving up." "Good. Giving up is for quitters." Mia took a bite of garlic bread. "Dad never gives up either, even when things are really hard. I've noticed that about him. When my mom left, everyone said he should give up, put me in foster care or with her parents or something, but he didn't. He kept me and figured it out." Ryan felt his throat tighten. "Mia, it's true. Mrs. Chen told me. People thought you couldn't do it alone, but you did." Claire was looking at Ryan with something in her eyes that made his heart stutter. "You absolutely did." The conversation flowed more easily after that. Mia grilled Claire about her job, her company, what it was like to be in charge of hundreds of employees. Claire asked about Mia's favorite subjects in school, her friends, her dreams for the future. They discovered a shared love of mystery novels and a mutual appreciation for terrible puns. Ryan mostly listened, watching these two important people in his life find common ground, and felt the weight of possibility settle over him. After dinner, while Ryan was clearing plates, his phone rang. The number was unknown, but something made him answer. "Mr. Cole." Richard Vaughn's voice was cold and controlled. "I hope I'm not interrupting your evening."
Ryan's blood turned to ice. What do you want? Across the room, Claire froze. Mia looked up, sensing the shift in atmosphere. I wanted to give you one last chance to make the intelligent choice, Richard said. Walk away from my daughter. Publicly announce that the marriage was a mistake, that you've realized you're incompatible. Do it tomorrow, and I'll forget this conversation ever happened. And if I don't? Then tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Chicago receives a very interesting story about a CEO who paid a desperate businessman to pose as her husband, complete with bank records, timelines, and evidence of fraud. Ryan felt Claire move beside him, her face pale. You're bluffing, Ryan said, though his voice lacked conviction. Try me. I have the receipts, Mr. Cole. Literally, the $50,000 transfer the day before you appeared as her husband. Your financial desperation. The whole sordid little arrangement. Richard's voice turned sharp. I'm offering you an escape. Take it. And Claire? What happens to her? My daughter will survive. She always does. But her reputation will be damaged, her credibility questioned. The board will have no choice but to accept my merger proposal. She'll be removed from operational control, given some meaningless title, and fade into the comfortable obscurity she should have embraced years ago. Ryan looked at Claire, saw the fear and resignation in her eyes. She knew what was coming. She'd probably been expecting this. No, Ryan said. I'm sorry? I said no. I'm not walking away. Do your worst. You're making a terrible mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. Ryan's voice steadied. You want to expose us? Go ahead. We'll face it together. But I'm not abandoning Claire because you're threatening me. Richard was silent for a long moment. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. But I'm not for sale, Mr. Vaughn. Not for $200,000. Not for my reputation. Not for anything. You don't get to decide what happens here anymore. We'll see about that. The line went dead. Ryan stood there, phone in hand, feeling the enormity of what he'd just done. He'd chosen Claire over safety. He'd chosen honesty over protection. He'd chosen to fight instead of flee. Ryan? Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. What did he say? Ryan looked at her, then at Mia, who was watching with wide eyes. He's going to expose us, tomorrow. Everything. The payment, the arrangement, all of it. Claire's face crumpled. Oh no, Ryan, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Stop. Ryan set down his phone. This isn't your fault. This is your father being a manipulative bully, and we're not giving him what he wants. But the media, the scrutiny, Mia will be affected. I'm right here, Mia said quietly, and I can hear you. They both turned to look at her. She was still sitting at the table, her dinner half finished, looking small and scared but determined. Mia, I'm sorry you had to hear that, Ryan said. This is adult stuff, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. But I do worry about it. What's going to happen? Ryan sat down beside his daughter. The truth is going to come out about how Claire and I started. It's going to be in the news, and people are going to talk about it, and it might be uncomfortable for a while. Will people be mean to you? Probably. What about Claire? Definitely to Claire. Mia looked at Claire, who had tears streaming down her face that she was trying unsuccessfully to hide. That's not fair, Mia said. You were just trying to protect your company. I was, Claire said thickly. But I dragged your dad into it. I put both of you at risk. And now we deal with it, Ryan said firmly. Together, that's what we do. But Ryan, your business, your reputation, will survive or won't. I can't control what other people think or say. But I can control my choices, and I choose to stand with you. Claire pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried, while years of fighting alone finally broke through her carefully maintained armor. Mia slipped off her chair and came to stand beside them. After a moment's hesitation, she reached out and touched Claire's arm. It's okay, Mia said softly. When my mom left, everyone talked about us too. Kids at school, their parents, everyone. It was really hard. But Dad always said that people who judge you without knowing your story aren't worth worrying about, and he was right. Claire looked at Mia through tears. You're very wise. I learned from the best.
Mia glanced at Ryan.
We're going to be okay, right, Dad?
Ryan pulled both of them close. Yeah, kiddo, we're going to be okay. They stood there in the small kitchen, three people facing an uncertain future, bound together by choice and circumstance, and something that was starting to feel a lot like family. Eventually, Claire pulled herself together, wiping her eyes. I should go. I need to call my lawyers, prepare a statement, figure out damage control. Or, Ryan said, you could stay. Eat tiramisu. Let the lawyers wait until tomorrow. Ryan, this is a crisis. I can't just... Yes, you can. The news breaks tomorrow whether you panic tonight or not. So you can spend tonight freaking out alone in your penthouse, or you can stay here with us. He squeezed her hand. Your choice. Claire looked around the small house, at the worn furniture and scuffed floors, at Mia watching her with cautious hope, at Ryan holding her like she was worth fighting for. Okay, she said quietly. I'll stay. They ate tiramisu in the living room, sitting on the floor, because Mia insisted it was more fun that way. Claire told stories about disastrous board meetings and corporate politics gone wrong. Mia described her best friend's dramatic breakup with her boyfriend of 2 weeks. Ryan just listened, watching these two people find their rhythm, and felt something settle in his chest. At 8, Mia declared she needed to do homework and disappeared upstairs, leaving Ryan and Claire alone. She's amazing, Claire said softly. You've raised an incredible kid. She pretty much raised herself. I just tried not to screw her up too badly. You did more than that. Claire leaned against him. Ryan, about tomorrow. We face it together. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Ryan tilted her face up to look at him. I know you're used to fighting alone, but you don't have to anymore. Let me stand with you. Even though it might destroy you. Even though... Why? Ryan thought about how to answer that. Because he was tired of playing it safe. Because Claire had woken something in him that had been dormant for years. Because watching her be brave made him want to be brave too. Because you're worth fighting for, he said simply. Claire kissed him then, desperate and grateful and scared. Ryan kissed her back, pouring every promise he couldn't yet put into words into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, Claire rested her forehead against his. I think I'm falling in love with you, she whispered. And it's terrifying. Ryan's heart stopped, then started again, beating a rhythm that felt like her name. Yeah, he said roughly. Me too. They sat there in the quiet house, holding each other while the world outside prepared to judge them, while Richard Vaughn prepared his attack, while tomorrow loomed with all its uncertainty and threat. But for tonight, they were together. For tonight, they were enough. At 9, Ryan walked Claire to her car. The night was cold and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Thank you for staying, he said, for giving Mia a chance, for being honest with her. Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with her. Claire touched his face gently. No matter what happens tomorrow, tonight was worth it. Tomorrow we fight. Tomorrow we fight, Claire agreed. Together. Ryan watched her drive away, then went inside to find Mia sitting on the stairs, clearly waiting for him. So, she said, Claire's nice. Yeah? Yeah, I mean, she's kind of fancy and she uses big words sometimes, but she's nice, and she really likes you. I really like her too. Mia was quiet for a moment. Dad? Are you going to marry her? Like for real this time? Ryan sat beside his daughter on the stairs. I don't know, kiddo. Maybe, if things work out. But that's a long way off. But you could see it? Like, you could imagine her being part of our family? Ryan thought about Claire crying in his arms, about her eating tiramisu on his living room floor, about the way she'd looked at Mia like she was precious and important. Yeah, he said softly. I could imagine it. Mia nodded, processing this. Okay, but Dad, if you do marry her for real, can we have an actual wedding this time, with cake and everything? Ryan laughed, pulling his daughter close. Definitely with cake. That night, alone in his room, Ryan stared at the ceiling and thought about tomorrow. The exposure, the judgment, the media storm that was coming. His small business would be scrutinized, his choices questioned, his relationship with Claire dissected by strangers who knew nothing about them,
It should terrify him. Part of him was terrified, but another part, the part that had chosen Claire over $200,000, that had refused to abandon her when threatened, that had stood in his kitchen and promised to face tomorrow together, that part was ready. Whatever came next, they'd handle it. They'd be honest, they'd be brave, and they'd have each other's backs. That had to be enough. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "I'm home. Lawyers briefed. Statement drafted. Ready as I'll ever be. How are you?" Ryan typed back. "Scared, but okay. We've got this. Together. Together." Ryan set down his phone and closed his eyes, and for the first time in 8 years, he didn't feel alone. The morning came too quickly, arriving with gray winter light and the buzzing of Ryan's phone at 6 a.m. The first message was from Claire. "It's live. Tribune just posted. I'm sorry." Ryan sat up in bed, his heart already racing, and opened the news app on his phone. The headline hit him like a physical blow. Vaughn Industries CEO accused of hiring fake husband in elaborate deception. The article was brutal, efficient, and clearly leaked by someone with access to detailed financial records. It laid out everything. The $50,000 payment, the timeline, Ryan's financial struggles, Claire's battles with her father. The writer had spun it as a corporate scandal, painting Claire as manipulative and Ryan as either a willing accomplice or a desperate fool. By 6:15, Ryan's phone was ringing. Danny from the tavern. 2 clients, a reporter from a local news station. He ignored them all and called Claire instead. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with control. "Have you seen it?" "Yeah, are you okay?" "I've been better. My office has been fielding calls since 5 a.m. The board wants an emergency meeting. My father is playing shocked and concerned for the media." She laughed, but it was hollow. "He's winning, Ryan. This is exactly what he wanted." "Then we don't let him win." "How?" "The story is everywhere. By noon, every news outlet in the city will have picked it up. By tonight, it'll be national." Ryan thought about Mia, still asleep upstairs, who would wake up to a world that was talking about her father. He thought about his business, his reputation, the carefully built life that was about to be examined by thousands of strangers. Then he thought about Claire's hand in his, about choosing to fight instead of flee, about the promise he'd made to stand with her. "We tell the truth," he said. "Our version, before your father controls the entire narrative." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we do an interview today. We sit down with someone credible and we tell them everything, how it started, why it started, how it became real. We own the story instead of letting it own us." Claire was quiet for a long moment. "That's incredibly risky. If we admit to the arrangement, they already know about the arrangement. Your father made sure of that. But they don't know why you asked me. They don't know what your father's been doing to you for 5 years. They don't know that something fake became something real." Ryan's voice steadied. "We can't control what people think, but we can control what truth they have access to." "You're willing to do that? Put yourself out there like that?" "For you?" "Yeah, I am." He heard her breath catch. "Ryan, I need to tell Mia first, before she sees it online or hears it from someone else. But after that, I'm ready. If you are. I'll make the calls. I know a journalist who's fair, who'll actually listen instead of just looking for sound bites." Claire's voice firmed. "Thank you for not running." "I told you I wouldn't." After they hung up, Ryan sat in the quiet of his bedroom and prepared himself for the hardest conversation of his life. He could hear Mia stirring upstairs, the familiar sounds of her morning routine. In a few minutes, she'd come downstairs expecting breakfast and normalcy, and he'd have to shatter that expectation with truth. He found her in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, pouring cereal. "Morning, Dad," she said cheerfully. Then she saw his face. "What's wrong?" Ryan sat down at the table and Mia joined him, her expression shifting from sleepy contentment to concern. "Remember how I told you that Claire and I started with an arrangement, that she paid me to pretend to be her husband?" "Yeah." "That story came out this morning. It's in the news. People are talking about it." Mia's eyes widened. "Like on TV?" "In the newspaper, online, probably on TV later. And it's going to be messy for a while. People are going to have opinions about me, about Claire, about our choices." "What kind of opinions?" Ryan chose his words carefully. "Some people will think we did something wrong.
that Claire was dishonest, that I was greedy, that the whole thing was a scam. Other people might understand why we did it, but either way, there's going to be attention. People might talk about us. Maybe reporters will show up. It's going to be uncomfortable. Mia processed this with the seriousness of someone far older than 11. Are you in trouble? Like legal trouble? No, we didn't break any laws, but our reputation might take a hit. What about my school? Will kids say stuff? Ryan's heart broke a little. They might? And if they do, you tell a teacher, or you call me, or you come home. We'll handle it together. Well, what about Claire? What happens to her? Her father is using this to try to take her company away. He's telling people she can't be trusted, that she's reckless. It's a fight, and it's going to be public. Mia was quiet for a long moment, her cereal forgotten. Then she looked up with eyes that were too knowing, too aware of the ways the world could hurt. Do you love her? She asked quietly. Like, really love her? The question hung in the air between them. Ryan thought about Claire crying in his arms, about her laugh at Danny's tavern, about the way she'd looked at Mia with such careful hope. Yeah, kiddo, I think I do. Then we fight for her. That's what you always taught me. You fight for people you love. Ryan pulled his daughter into his arms, overwhelmed by her courage, her fierce loyalty, her absolute certainty in the face of uncertainty. When did you get so wise? I learned from you, Dad. At 9 a.m., Ryan dropped Mia at school with strict instructions to call him if anything happened, if anyone said anything cruel, if she needed him for any reason. Mia hugged him hard before getting out of the truck. We're going to be okay, she said, echoing his words back to him. Yeah, we are. Ryan watched her walk into school, her backpack bouncing, her head high, and felt pride swell in his chest. Whatever happened next, at least he'd raised a daughter who knew how to face hard things with dignity. The interview was set for 2 p.m. at a neutral location, a conference room at a downtown hotel. Claire had arranged it with Jennifer Martinez, a veteran journalist known for thorough, fair reporting. Ryan met Claire in the lobby, and they stood there for a moment just looking at each other. Claire looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed despite professional makeup, but she also looked determined, her spine straight, her chin up. Ready? She asked. No, but let's do it anyway. Jennifer Martinez was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put Ryan at ease. She shook both their hands and gestured to the chairs arranged facing each other. Thank you for agreeing to this, she said. I've read the Tribune piece. I've also done my own research. I'm interested in your side of the story. Thank you for listening, Claire said. Jennifer set up her recording device and pulled out a notebook. Let's start at the beginning. Ms. Vaughn, why did you hire Ryan Cole to pose as your husband? Claire took a breath and told the truth. She explained her father's campaign to undermine her, the years of attempted hostile takeovers, the merger that would destroy everything her grandfather had built. She described the desperation that had driven her to Ryan's workshop, the fear that had made her willing to fabricate a marriage to prove she wasn't vulnerable. I know how it looks, Claire said quietly. I know it seems manipulative and dishonest, but I was out of options. My father was using my unmarried status as proof that I was isolated, emotionally unstable, incapable of maintaining relationships, and he was winning. So you created a relationship, Jennifer said. I created the appearance of one, yes. Jennifer turned to Ryan. And you agreed to this arrangement for $50,000? Ryan met her eyes directly. Yes. My daughter had just gotten out of the hospital. I was drowning in medical bills. Ms. Vaughn offered me money I desperately needed, and all I had to do was attend one dinner and be polite. It seemed like an easy choice. But it wasn't one dinner. No, it became complicated very quickly. Ms. Vaughn's father saw through parts of the story and pushed harder. I had to decide whether to walk away or continue helping someone who was being bullied by her own father. And you chose to stay. I chose to stay. Jennifer made notes, her expression unreadable. When did this arrangement become a real relationship? Ryan and Claire looked at each other, and something passed between them, a shared memory of transformation, of the moment pretense gave way to truth. I'm not sure there was a single moment, Claire said. It was gradual. Ryan came to dinner with my father, and he was
himself. Honest, straightforward, unimpressed by power or wealth. He defended me not because he was being paid to, but because he saw the situation clearly and knew it was wrong. And for you, Mr. Cole? I watched her fight, Ryan said simply. Watched her refuse to be small or apologetic, even when her father tried to break her down. I watched her be brave, and it made me want to be brave too. Somewhere in all the pretending, I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. So you're saying this relationship is real now? Yes, they said in unison. Jennifer leaned back, studying them. You understand that people will be skeptical. The timing is convenient, admitting real feelings only after being exposed. I understand, Claire said, but it's the truth. We started with a transaction and we're ending with something real. I can't control whether people believe that. Mr. Cole, Richard Vaughn offered you $200,000 to walk away from his daughter. Why didn't you take it? Ryan had been expecting this question. Because some things aren't for sale. My integrity isn't for sale. My word isn't for sale. And Claire, he looked at her. Claire isn't someone you walk away from just because it's easier or more profitable. Even though refusing that money put you and your daughter at risk? My daughter is learning by watching me that you stand up for people, even when it costs you something. That's more valuable than any amount of money. Jennifer asked more questions about the fake marriage license, about their plans going forward, about how they intended to handle the fallout. Claire answered with careful honesty, admitting mistakes while refusing to apologize for fighting to protect her company. Ryan spoke about the complexity of the situation, about the impossibility of reducing human relationships to simple right or wrong. At the end of the hour, Jennifer turned off her recorder. For what it's worth, she said, I believe you. Not everyone will, but I do. This will run tomorrow morning, front page. It won't undo the damage from the Tribune piece, but it'll give people another perspective. That's all we can ask for, Claire said. Outside the hotel, Ryan and Claire stood in the cold afternoon air, exhausted and wrung out from the emotional intensity of reliving their story for public consumption. Now what? Claire asked. Now we wait, and we get ready for whatever comes next. Claire's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face went pale. What is it? Emergency board meeting. Tonight at 7. My father's calling for a vote of no confidence. She looked up at Ryan, fear evident in her eyes. This is it. This is his endgame. Then we show up and we fight. Ryan, you can't come to this. It's board members only. Then I'll wait outside. I'll be there when you come out, win or lose. You're not facing this alone. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve you. Yeah, you do, and I'm not going anywhere. The board meeting was held in Vaughn Industries' downtown headquarters, in a conference room on the 42nd floor that screamed corporate power. Ryan waited in the lobby, watching employees come and go, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan, watching the clock tick toward Claire's potential defeat. At 7:15, Mrs. Chen called. Mia told me what's happening, she said without preamble. How bad is it? Pretty bad, but we're handling it. You're at the office building? Yeah, waiting. Good man. You tell that lady she's got people rooting for her, people who know what it's like to fight for what you've built. I will. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. At 8, Danny texted, saw the interview online. You did good, kid. Proud of you. At 8:30, 3 of Ryan's clients sent messages of support. Not everyone was condemning them. Not everyone believed the worst. At 9:45, the elevator doors opened and Claire emerged. Her face was unreadable, her posture rigid. Ryan stood, his heart in his throat. Claire? She looked at him, and slowly a smile broke across her face, tired and genuine and triumphant. I won. The vote failed. I keep my company. Ryan crossed the lobby in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, shaking with relief and exhaustion and the aftermath of adrenaline. Tell me everything, he said. They sat in the empty lobby while Claire described the meeting, her father's accusations, the board's questions, the moment she'd stood up and presented her case. She'd been honest about the arrangement with Ryan, but she'd also presented 5 years of financial data, innovation metrics, and employee satisfaction scores. She'd shown them a company that was thriving under her leadership,
and she'd asked them point blank if they were willing to throw that away because her personal life was unconventional. Then Jennifer's article posted during the meeting, Claire said. Someone pulled it up on their phone and started reading it aloud. Your quotes, my quotes, the full story, and the tide shifted. They still weren't happy about the deception, but they understood why I did it. And more importantly, they understood that my father was manipulating the situation. So what now? Now I have to prove I can lead through a scandal, rebuild trust with employees and clients who feel betrayed, figure out how to separate my personal life from my professional reputation. Claire looked at him. And somewhere in all of that, I'd like to actually date you. For real. Without pretense or strategy or corporate implications. I'd like that too. They sat there in the quiet lobby, two people who'd survived their first real battle together, and let the relief wash over them. Come home with me, Ryan said. Have leftover tiramisu. Tell Mia the good news, just exist for a while without fighting. That sounds perfect. At home, Mia was still awake despite it being nearly 11, curled up on the couch with Mrs. Chen watching a baking show. Well? Mia demanded the moment they walked in. I won, Claire said, and Mia jumped up and hugged her, spontaneous and fierce and utterly accepting. I knew you would. Dad said you were a fighter. Mrs. Chen stood, patting Claire's arm with gruff affection. Good. Now, you can stop all this drama and just be happy, yes? I'm going to try, Claire said. After Mrs. Chen left, the three of them sat in Ryan's small living room eating leftover tiramisu straight from the container because no one had the energy to get plates. They talked about the interview, the board meeting, the messages of support that had started coming in alongside the criticism. So what happens now? Mia asked. Are you guys still married? Ryan and Claire looked at each other. Technically, yes, Claire said, but we're thinking of it more as we're dating, getting to know each other for real. So you're married people who are dating each other? It's complicated. Adults make everything complicated, Mia said wisely. Then she yawned. Can Claire stay over? I don't want her to have to drive home when she's this tired. Ryan raised an eyebrow at Claire, who looked surprised and touched. If it's okay with your dad, I'd love to stay. Guest room is yours, Ryan said. Fair warning, the mattress is terrible and the room is full of storage boxes. Sounds perfect. After Mia was in bed, Ryan and Claire sat on the front porch in the cold night air, wrapped in blankets, watching the neighborhood settle into sleep. Thank you, Claire said quietly. For today, for all of it. You did the hard part. You faced down your father and won. Only because you were there. Knowing you were waiting in that lobby, that you weren't going to leave no matter what happened, that gave me strength I didn't know I had. Ryan pulled her closer. We make each other stronger. That's how this works, right? I think so. I'm still learning. They sat in comfortable silence, and Ryan thought about how much had changed in 2 weeks. How he'd gone from barely surviving to fighting battles he'd never asked for to sitting with a woman he was pretty sure he loved while his daughter slept peacefully upstairs. Ryan? Claire's voice was hesitant. What do we do about the marriage? Eventually we'll have to address it legally. Eventually, but not tonight. Tonight, we just exist. Just exist, Claire repeated. I like that. The following days brought a media storm, as expected. Jennifer's article sparked a national conversation about corporate bullying, about the pressure on women in leadership, about the complexity of human relationships. Some outlets were sympathetic. Others remained critical. Social media was predictably divided. But through it all, Ryan and Claire stood together. They didn't hide. They didn't apologize for choices that had brought them to each other. They just lived their lives as honestly as they could. Ryan's business took a hit at first. 2 clients canceled contracts citing negative publicity, but others reached out specifically because of the story, impressed by his willingness to stand by his principles. Danny's Tavern saw an uptick in customers who wanted to see the place where it all happened. Ryan found this both amusing and mortifying. Mia handled the attention at school better than Ryan had feared. A few kids made comments, but Mia shut them down with the confidence of someone who knew her worth. She told anyone who asked that her dad had helped someone who needed it and fallen in love in the process, and if they had a problem with that, they could take it up with her. Ryan had never been more proud. 3 weeks after the scandal broke, Claire showed up at Ryan's workshop on a Tuesday afternoon, wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. "I need to learn how to weld," she announced. Ryan looked up from the railing he was working on. "You need to what?" "My grandfather tried to teach me when I was young. I never paid attention because I thought it was boring, but I've been thinking about it lately, about how he built things with his hands before he built his empire. I want to learn." Ryan set down his torch and smiled. "Okay, but you have to follow safety protocols, and you have to be patient with yourself. It takes time to get good at this." "I can be patient." Over the next hour, Ryan taught Claire the basics: how to strike an arc, how to control the puddle, how to move steadily along the joint. She was terrible at first, her welds messy and uneven, but she laughed at her mistakes instead of getting frustrated. "This is harder than running a company," she said, examining her crooked bead. "Different skill set, but you'll get it." They worked side by side in the shop, and Ryan realized this was what he'd been missing. Not just a partner in crisis, but a partner in the ordinary moments. Someone who wanted to learn his craft, who valued his world, who showed up not because she needed something, but because she wanted to be there. At 5, Mia burst through the door, home from school. "Claire, you're here!" She dropped her backpack. "Can you stay for dinner?" "If it's okay with your dad." "More than okay," Ryan said. Over dinner, real homemade sauce this time because Ryan was feeling ambitious, Claire told them about her day at work. She'd implemented new transparency measures at the company, opening up communications with employees who'd felt betrayed by the scandal. She'd also cut all business ties with her father, officially and publicly. "He called it a betrayal," Claire said. "I called it setting boundaries." "Good for you," Mia said fiercely. After dinner, while Ryan cleaned up, Claire and Mia worked on homework together at the kitchen table. Ryan listened to them discuss algebra and laugh over terrible math puns, and felt his heart do something complicated and wonderful in his chest. This was what family looked like. Not perfect, not conventional, but real and chosen and enough. That night, after Mia was in bed, Claire and Ryan sat on the porch again in their usual spot. "I've been thinking," Claire said carefully, "about the marriage, about what we want it to be. And I don't want to stay married to you." Ryan's stomach dropped. "Oh. Let me finish. I don't want to stay married to you because we accidentally are. I want to get divorced, do this properly, and then, if you're willing, I want to date you for real, court you, fall in love with you intentionally instead of incidentally, and maybe someday, if we both want it, we could get married again. But this time it would be a choice we make together, not a lie that became true." Ryan absorbed this, turning it over in his mind. She was right. Their marriage was built on deception, even if it had transformed into something real. Starting fresh, choosing each other with full knowledge and intent, that felt honest in a way their current situation never could be. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it. Let's get divorced," Claire laughed, and it was pure joy. "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I have a condition, though." "Of course you do. When we get married again, if we get married again, Mia gets to be involved in the planning. She already told me she wants cake." Noted, cake is mandatory. They sat there planning their divorce with the kind of care most people reserve for planning weddings, and Ryan realized he'd never been happier. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, quiet and uncontested. The media barely noticed. They'd moved on to newer scandals, newer stories. Ryan and Claire signed the papers in a lawyer's office and walked out legally single and completely committed to each other. "So," Claire said as they stood on the courthouse steps, "we're not married anymore." "Nope." "Want to get coffee? Our first date as divorced people?" "Absolutely." They dated properly for a year. Real dates where Claire came to Ryan's world and Ryan ventured into hers, where they learned each other's rhythms and quirks and wounds. They fought sometimes, learning how to disagree without assuming the worst. They celebrated small victories and weathered small crises. They became partners in the truest sense. Mia gave her approval early on, declaring Claire pretty cool for a CEO and insisting she be included in regular movie nights and Sunday dinners. Mrs. Chen declared them both stubborn fools who deserved each other, which everyone took as high praise. Richard Vaughn made one last attempt at a hostile takeover 6 months after the scandal, but the board stood with Claire. He eventually backed down, and father and daughter settled into a cold but civil distance. Claire made peace with the fact that her father would never see her the way she needed to be seen, and she stopped letting his approval define her worth. Ryan's business thrived as word spread about his integrity and craftsmanship. He hired an apprentice, a young woman from the neighborhood who reminded him of himself at her age, hungry to learn, willing to work hard, building something from nothing. On a quiet Sunday morning, 14 months after their divorce, Ryan woke up to find Claire making breakfast in his kitchen. She'd stayed over more nights than not lately, keeping clothes in his closet, coffee mugs in his cabinet, integrating into his life so seamlessly that he couldn't remember what it felt like without her. "I have a question," she said, flipping pancakes with the concentration of someone still learning domestic skills. "Shoot. Remember how you said that when we got married again, Mia had to be involved in the planning?" Ryan's heart started beating faster. "Yeah?" Claire turned off the stove and faced him, her expression nervous and determined and hopeful all at once. "I love you, Ryan Cole. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you show up even when it costs you something. I love how you've built a beautiful life from hard circumstances. I love watching you with Mia, seeing the father you are. I love your small house and your terrible mattress and your neighborhood bar. I love all of it. All of you." She took his hands. "I don't have a ring. I don't have a plan. I just know that I want to spend my life with you for real this time. So I'm asking, will you marry me again, properly?" Ryan pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "On one condition," he said. "Name it." "We tell Mia together, right now, because this is as much about her as it is about us." "Deal." They went upstairs and woke Mia, who complained groggily about it being too early until she saw their faces. "What's wrong?" she asked, suddenly alert. "Nothing's wrong," Claire said. "I just asked your dad to marry me and I wanted you to know." Mia's eyes went wide. "You did? What did he say?" "He said yes, but we wanted to ask you if that's okay." Mia looked between them, and Ryan saw her processing, considering, evaluating with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. "Will you actually have a wedding this time, with cake?" "So much cake," Claire promised. "And I get to help plan it?" "Absolutely." "And you'll actually be happy together, not just pretending?" Claire sat on the edge of Mia's bed. "We'll be really happy, I promise. Your dad makes me happier than I ever thought possible. And you," her voice caught. "You've been so gracious and welcoming when you had every right to be suspicious or angry. I hope I can be someone you're proud to have as a stepmom, even though I'm still learning how to do normal family stuff." Mia studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "You're doing pretty good so far. And yeah, it's okay. You can marry my dad." Ryan exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. "But," Mia added seriously, "if you hurt him, I will tell Mrs. Chen and she will make your life miserable." Claire laughed, wiping her eyes. "That's fair. I accept those terms." They had a small wedding 6 months later in Danny's tavern, because of course they did. Just family and close friends, with Mia as the maid of honor and Danny officiating with a license he'd gotten online. Mrs. Chen cried and pretended she wasn't. Claire wore a simple dress and Ryan wore his best suit, and they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising honesty and partnership and showing up even when it was hard. When the judge pronounced them married, Mia whooped, and the whole bar erupted in cheers. They danced to Thunder Road just like they had on their first real date, and Ryan held Claire close and thought about the strange path that had brought them here. From desperate lies to honest love. From strangers to partners. From performance to truth. "No regrets?" Claire murmured against his shoulder. "Not one. You? Just that we didn't do this sooner. We did it when we were ready. That's what matters." They swayed to the music while around them their chosen family celebrated, and Ryan thought about the single dad he'd been 2 years ago, isolated, struggling, keeping his world small and controlled to avoid more pain. That man wouldn't recognize his life now. Married to a CEO, stepfather to a girl who'd grown into a fierce, compassionate young woman, running a thriving business, surrounded by people who loved him, not despite his ordinariness, but because of it. He'd been terrified of letting someone in, of risking his heart, of stepping outside his carefully maintained boundaries. But Claire had walked into his workshop desperate and afraid, and somehow that desperation had saved them both. They'd started with a lie, but they'd built something true, something worth fighting for, something whole. And as Ryan held his wife, his real, chosen, legally and emotionally committed wife, on the dance floor of a neighborhood bar in Chicago, he realized he'd finally stopped just surviving. He was living, and it was beautiful.